So please note that the meeting is being filmed and recorded and will be uploaded to the website in due course. If you wish to record the meeting yourself, then please do so with due regard to the Council's protocol on audio, visual recording and photography at public meetings. If the fire alarm sounds, please exit the chamber by the emergency exit located at the entrance and to the rear of the chamber and congregate in the visitors' car park. I'd like to remind members and officers to speak clearly and audibly when addressing the meeting. Thank you very much. So start with apologies, and I have apologies from Councillors Donoghue, Moncrief, Councillor Baker, Sladden and Taylor, and hopefully we'll have Councillor Goodrick and Councillor Jabor joining us remotely. So I come to the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of June. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes of the meeting held on 13th of June, subject to any amendments proposed at this meeting? All in agreement? So if we could just show. Thank you very much. Take that as read, Nikki. So do any members have any declarations of interest on any items on the agenda? No. Oh, Caroline, sorry, do you have an interest?
Yes, sorry, Nigel. My apologies for not being in there in person, but I've got COVID, so I wasn't bringing that into the building.
Thank you for that.
The National Landscape piece, I am Vice Chair of the National Landscape, so it's a personal, non-prejudicial, non-pecuniary interest, but in the interest of transparency, I will declare it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll record that, Caroline. So I'll move on to now item 4, which is public questions. So I have 3 public questions. Richard Crabtree, Chris Wilson and Simon Thackeray. I'm going to take Simon's question at item 6 because it is about item 6 and that makes logical sense. So if I could ask Richard, would you like to come forward and give your question, please?
Chair, just before you carry on, Councillor Jabor has got his hand up. I suspect it's a similar declaration.
Okay, well, we'll just take that then, George. No, I don't think we're getting anything from George. Okay, we'll move on. Sorry. Richard. Oh, have you pressed the green button? Sorry, I should have. Just press it and the red light should come on. Fantastic.
Is that better?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Great.
Good afternoon, Chair, Councillors. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the parents of Sheriff Hutton and the nearby villages around school transport to Outwood Academy, Easingwold. We urgently need your help. Children from our villages have been had transport removed on 2 occasions, leaving those who were already settled into their secondary schools without a way to get there. This time last year, parents applied for secondary places. Most of them chose their catchment school, as they always have had, their catchment school being Outwood Academy, Easingwold. We received no direct email or letter warning of any change to the North Yorkshire website continued to reference application to a catchment school in 4 places until March of this year. Officers have acknowledged these errors in the appeals that have been underway, and parents made their choices in good faith and unaware that the rules have changed. On the 3rd of March 2025, allocations were confirmed. Our children were accepted into the catchment school. Preparations began and families had every reason to assume transport would be provided. On the 23rd of May, the bombshell landed that parents received an email saying transport had been withdrawn under the new policy. No one in the village knew. Appeals followed, but 2 days before the end of term, we were told that no paid-for passes would be available either, leaving the children of Sheriff Hutton and the surrounding villages stranded. On the 28th of August, at the 11th hour, Outwood Academy Easingwold arranged some temporary transport through the contractor Morse Coaches for this year only. But last Friday, this was pulled. We were told that the provision has been withdrawn because the costs are prohibitive. North Yorkshire Council refuses to engage in any support for these children. From October the 3rd, our children will have no way to reach their catchment school, which they've already started attending and are settled into. This pattern of poor communication, sudden policy bombshells, last-minute U-turns has caused enormous stress and disruption to our children's education. Officers were warned that this policy change would harm rural families, and the evidence is here. Nothing now will change until 2028. By then, villages like Sheriff Hutton may no longer have young families left. It may lead to more school closures and so on. This is the kind of example that Kevin Hollingworth, our MP, was talking about, expressing his concerns to councillors recently. With this in mind, I ask the councillors here to recognise, and the council to recognise the exceptional circumstances and work with the school and the coach company to find an urgent solution so that these children aren't left stranded. On Tuesday this week, on the 24th of September, the CEO of Outward Academy Easing Road, the Outward Academy Trust, indicated that he's reached out to North Yorkshire Council to work on viable solutions for these families, which may involve relatively minor changes to existing bus routes. I quote, "We approached the local authority, but they are not willing to make the necessary changes to facilitate this or explain why this was not an acceptable solution."
Could we just stick to your written question, because that's what you've submitted, rather than...
Yeah, that was in my original point.
Was it?
Yes,
Okay.
so it's recognised the exceptional circumstances.
Okay.
And secondly, to restore the policy review to its original timing so it begins this year, not next, and avoids further harm to rural villages like ours. These children are now left in the lurch. They can't be left in the lurch. We need this action. And I'd be keen to hear how you view this as councillors and how we can go about solving this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So we have a response from the Assistant Director for Inclusion. I'll read that out and I'll make sure you get a written copy of it afterwards. Thank you to Mr. Crabtree for your statement and questions. The Council's home to school transport policy was adopted at the meeting of the full Council in July 2024 and was implemented with effect from 1st of September 2024. The policy aligns the Council's arrangements with the Department of Education statutory guidance for home to school travel, including the main eligibility criteria, which is that assistance is provided to the nearest suitable school with available places. In adopting the policy, the Council determined that it should be implemented on a phased basis, such that any pupil with existing eligibility for transport would not be affected. Whilst the Council acknowledged that this would result in pupils in individual areas having eligibility to different schools, this was considered preferable to the potential impact upon an individual pupil's education by the potential requirement to change schools. It is not true to say, therefore, that the Council has withdrawn assistance with travel for any pupil. The Council remains committed to meeting its statutory obligation to provide assistance with travel to all pupils who have eligibility. The Council's consideration of the policy was preceded by an extensive consultation exercise about the policy proposals. All primary schools in the county were notified about the consultation and were asked to notify parents. The exercise was also promoted on the Council's website via its social media channels and via local media outlets. Following the implementation of the policy, the Council's website was updated to ensure that the information was available to parents about its implications. For example, an online tool was provided to assist parents in identifying their nearest suitable schools. This information was made available on the web pages, providing information about school admissions and those completing applications for school places after the 1 September 2024 were asked to confirm that they had considered the implications of the revised policy when making their application. Whilst it is acknowledged that some pages on the Council's website did contain old information about the previous policy, analysis of the use of the website has indicated that those specific pages were accessed on only a relative small number of occasions. The Council does not believe, therefore, that parents were misled through the continued existence of the information. All pupils who were allocated a new school place to start in September 2025 had their eligibility for assistance with home to school travel assessed in accordance with the 2024 policy, and eligibility was not provided to pupils who were not attending their nearest suitable school, where places were available at the point that places were allocated. Where pupils attend a school other than their nearest suitable school with places available, then it remains that parents are responsible for the arrangements for their children's travel to school. The council is not able to comment about the arrangements which have been established by schools but subsequently withdrawn. So in response to the specific questions raised, the council's policy provides only limited discretion for the provision of assistance to pupils who have been determined as being not eligible for assistance, e.g., including where paid permits are offered, where there is spare capacity on existing NYC contracted transport. The Council remains committed to undertaking a post-implementation review of the implementation of the policy in accordance with the commitment provided at the meeting of the full Council on 24 July 2024, and a report on this will be presented in autumn 2026.
Thank you, Chair. Can I enact my right to reply to that, please?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you. With respect, Chair, at this point, I think the relevant point is that this is about taking responsibility for the acknowledged errors by the council, in which have left children who have already started their new school stranded. The council's own failings, which have been acknowledged through the appeals process, have created this problem. I understand that that hiding behind policy, savings targets, and the review being pushed to 2026 means nothing will change until 2028, with 3 more years of damage. And whoever is here and in the seats here in this room will then be picking up. There are 13 more families who are currently in the admissions window from Sheriff Hutton this year, and they're left in the lurch. They have total uncertainty about what this means for the future of their children's education. So I would ask, and Sheriff Hutton residents would ask, for 2 things: recognise and act on the exceptional circumstances this year for the families of Sheriff Hutton, and start the post-implementation review this year as promised in the to the families in villages like ours. Otherwise, it's knowingly allowing harm to come to rural communities and families. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I will make sure that your reply goes to the Assistant Director.
Appreciate that.
And then I will get Nikki to forward you that reply.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, of course. Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. We'll make sure that you get the reply as well. Yeah. So thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
So we now come to Chris Wilson. Chris, would you like to step forward, please? It's the green button. I don't know. Oh, it's been left on. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Is that working?
Yeah, can hear you.
Thank you very
much.
Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. I'm speaking today on behalf of parents in North Yorkshire who continue to be let down by the Council's handling of the home to school transport policy. When this policy was voted through in July 2024, councillors were promised a post-implementation review in 2025 with a working group. These safeguards were written into the official papers and intended to mitigate the clear risk to rural families. Officers themselves acknowledged in the Equality Impact Assessment that rural families and communities would be disproportionately affected by this. This promise so far has been broken. Officers have delayed the review to a start to 2026 and a report in 2027. As Mr. Crabtree said, that means that there'll be no change action until September 2028 at the earliest. In the meantime, the flaws in this policy will continue to damage and cause confusion for families and schools for years. At last week's scrutiny committee, councillors in this room had a chance to challenge this but failed to act. The broken promise of a 2025 review went largely unchallenged. The mitigation of harm to rural families was effectively abandoned, an attempt by opposition councillors to create mechanisms for input on the scope and, most importantly, independence were quashed. As was said on the day, the councillors who have engaged or engineered in this mess have effectively been left to mark their own homework. And bizarrely, officers dismissed the idea of independent oversight as dangerous, which might be the case for them, but it's certainly not for the families that have been affected by this. So as today, the members to, first of all, do you find it acceptable that a written promise, which was the basis of the full council vote, has been reneged on without debate or consultation and understand that by refusing independent oversight and stakeholder involvement, this review has already lost all credibility with the families in this area. This isn't just about the transport policy, this is about trust in the council and promises that were made. And to be frank, at the moment, it's been pretty much shattered, that trust. Unless councillors here begin to stand up, hold officers to account and insist on keeping promises, we believe this trust will not be rebuilt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I've got a response here, again, from the Assistant Director for Inclusion, and I'll read that out. Thank you to Mr. Wilson for his statement. During the meeting of the full council on 24 July 2024, Councillor Wilkinson provided a commitment that she would commission a post-implementation review to report in 2026. Given that that was the case, the council does not accept that there has been any delay to the proposed review. The report relating to the post-implementation review will be presented to the executive during the autumn of 2026. If recommendations are proposed, then they may be subject to a consultation process and timescales set out in the Department for Education statutory guidance for home to school travel. On this basis, a public consultation could be required during the spring of 2027 prior to the consideration of a revised policy by the Executive and full Council before 31 July 2027. Should a revised policy be approved by the Council, then it will be implemented with effect from 1 September 2027. That's the end of the response.
Okay, thank you. If I could just respond, I suppose my only comment on that would be that our understanding that it was 2025, even if it is 2026 and 2027 when that comes through, you're still talking about another 2 years of uncertainty around this. So I still don't understand why it would have been reneged to do it this year. It could have been possibly done in 2025. So I don't understand why that's not the case. So I'll just make that statement.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'll make sure that that statement goes to the director, and you have a response, and that members also have that response as well. Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you. So we're going to take Simon's question at item 6. So I'll move on now to item 5, which is update by the local MPs. So Sir Alec has circulated a written report which members have for.
Just to ask something around the questions that have just been put forward. Am I allowed to make a comment on this?
Well, not normally. I mean, you could make a comment back to the questioner of your own volition, but it's not really for debate today.
I think it's more, I think as an ACC, we need to be seen to be taking a bit of action to look into this properly. I think we need to be asking the officers to come to here and explain this situation directly to us rather than having, because I would question the response of some of those answers there. So my recollection is completely different.
So further down the agenda, there's a work programme. So if you want to bring that up, then there's a work programme item. Very happy to take that then. So we have Sir Alex's report in front of us. So if I can now ask Kevin Hollinrake to step up and give his report. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon, Kevin. Much appreciated.
It's my pleasure. Nice to be here. Can I first say, before addressing the comments that I was going to address anyway in terms of home school transport, I fully recognise the financial pressure the local authority is in that due to changes in funding formulas and the withdrawal of the Rural Services Delivery Grants by this government, you're around about £40 million a year worse off. So that's puts huge strain on the authority and in what was a difficult funding climate anyway, due to financial pressures across the system. So difficult decisions have to be made, and obviously they're financial decisions. I have dealt with a large number of correspondences like previous two contributions. I'm going to say, as somebody who went to school in Easingwold and some of my co-pupils were from Sheriff Hutton, I have a great deal of sympathy in terms of the changes that will make, not just those individual pupils, but the integrity of the local community. And as I've said to you before in various conversations, and I appreciate Councillor Dadd and Councillor Les in terms of their interactions and other people in this room. I appreciate the discussions we've had, and I've had time with officers to discuss it. I would just appeal for two things: more discretion. I mean, we had a situation with one pupil that was in Low Mill in Farndale that was being asked to go to Rosedale School on the basis of a supposed closest route to Rosedale was over Blakey Ridge. I mean, I know that's not exactly how it works, but it's exactly how it is, how the policy operates in practice. Some of these things are just impractical and unfair. And so I would ask, and I know it's difficult, for a greater level of discretion in cases where those unfairnesses are apparent. And if the review, which were an obvious place to look at this, could be hastened, that would be in everybody's interest, I think. So I would make those points. In terms of other issues that relate to all of us, I think, if I can go through some of them, one of the big concerns we have right now as well is the number of solar applications we're seeing on productive farmland in the area. One just down the road from here, of course, with the Sturdy's farm, but many others. And as I've corresponded with the chief executive and with our leader, Councillor Les, on, I would urge for more pushback. The responses we're getting when residents express concern about solar applications and infrastructure applications like BESS applications is the fact whether we've got a climate emergency, and therefore, and the NPPF requires a kind of very a situation where we are positive towards renewable applications, but there are also requirements, of course, to make sure we utilise productive farmland for producing food, which I fully support, and the requirement to consider cumulative impact. And I think I just, at the moment, just don't understand. I don't see where that's happening in terms of where we're seeing the cumulative impact of many solar applications across North Yorkshire. And I'd be very keen to see. I know my letters that I've written have been considered and lodged against the various applications for the ones that are current. I would like to have a greater understanding of what officers are doing in terms of proper consideration of cumulative impact and the impact on our beauty of our countryside. Some other issues I think that we're all dealing with, the things like the flags that we're seeing on many different parts of the local authority area, my area. I'm going to say I'm very supportive of people being able to fly the flag with the Union Jack or the flag of St George, and I know some people are not comfortable with that, but I think it's a cry for help in terms of people's identity and being able to represent that with an allegiance to our flag. So certainly isn't something I want to see a wholesale removal of those kind of flags where they're not causing any unnecessary nuisance. I meet with our farming community regularly. I just have done. I've come from a roundtable with farmers who are in extreme pressure right now, not just due to the weather conditions that we've seen apparently over the last few months, and indeed in terms of volatility of prices, but in terms of the future of farming, the existential future of farming, in things like the family farm tax, which is very, very damaging, with the precipitous withdrawal of the sustainable farm incentive, which is putting that community under severe pressure too, and also the changes to peat in terms of what's defined as deep peat, which again is calling into question whether some of the rural sports that are so important to our local communities and many livelihoods, including our pubs and hospitality sector, will be severely under pressure if that industry is drawn to a halt through the back door. Our pubs and hospitality venues are under severe pressure through a number of different areas, and again, anything we can do to ease some of the difficulties they're seeing right now. Obviously, they've been hit by the jobs tax and by the future legislation in terms of the Employment Rights Bill, which will be very damaging. The A64 is very disappointing to see the A64, the dualling, which everybody's worked so hard on. I think just about everybody in this room has worked so hard on and been supportive of, has not obviously been categorised for investment in this round of the roads programme, RIS 3, I think it is, which is very disappointing given all the work put into it. I think we should continue to campaign for that in the future roads programme, but I say disappointing that is not the case. Malton livestock market is something, again, I've worked with the officers at North Yorkshire Council and the farming community and the auctioneers. Very keen to see a business case brought forward, which I think has been a long time coming, to be fair, from the farmers and auctioneers, but that's being compiled right now. So I do think we should do everything we can, as other local authorities have done up and down the country, and I've sent examples of that to Nick Hahn from one of the officers at North Yorkshire Council in terms of potential support for the livestock market being relocated. The livestock market, its current location, it has no long-term tenure, and it could be closed at any point in time by the estate. So I think we need to do whatever we can to make sure we have a solution to the relocation of the market. And we've got a site for it, of course, and some money is set aside in Section 106. So there must be a business plan that can be supported, and whatever support we can provide, and it may be in the form of loans to try and bridge the gap, would be much appreciated and something I would support. And finally, I think, unless I missed something, just the Filey town bus. Other parts of my constituency have town buses, and really keen to see a replacement for the town bus, which folded a couple of years ago. And David Skaith, our mayor, is looking at this in terms of what support he can provide. But again, it would be certainly much appreciated if North Yorkshire Council can also support that potential business case when it comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So are you happy to take questions from members? Fantastic. Yeah. So members, have anybody any questions or observations for Kevin? Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you, Kevin, for coming along today and for presenting your report. I just have two questions, if I can. The first one relates to the hour of free parking in Thirsk, which I know you believe is invaluable to trade in the town centre. And you'll be aware there is an ongoing review at the moment into free parking. And I would just like to understand your views as the MP about what you would think if there was any attempt to remove that free parking in Thirsk. And of a wider, more significant point, I wonder if you would agree with me that if free parking is good for Thirsk, then it's good for Pickering, Kirby Moorside, Filey, Malton, every town in your constituency and every town in the county, and that this should be expanded where there is local support for it, ensuring that there is a fair approach to all in our county.
I think your microphone's gone off, Kevin. Sorry, just press the green button.
Okay, shall I start that again? Yes, I'm very supportive of free parking. I understand the pressures on the local authority in terms of the revenue loss that may follow from that, but nevertheless, the council, all of us, depend on revenue that comes in from businesses that are thriving in our high street towns, and particularly when those businesses are seeing competition from kind of locations that don't have the cost of parking. Out of town shopping centres being a good example. So yes, I'm very supportive of that, and like to see consistency across all of Thirsk and Malton, and indeed probably all of North Yorkshire, to make sure every single town would benefit from that hour's free parking.
That's great. Thanks, Kevin, for your response there. And the second question I had, another one of my favourite topics, which is public toilets. You'll be aware I did run a petition, a free-to-pee petition that attracted 2,600 signatures. It turns out people do care very deeply about public conveniences, but more importantly, they care about fairness and making sure that public services are fair And there was a feeling in the community that Malton and Norton had been singled out. And I just wonder if, with that 2,600 people signing that petition, if we have your support as we battle to ensure that we're keeping our toilets in Malton and elsewhere free and open for the public to use.
Sorry, a microphone again, Karen.
Again, these are decisions for you, of course, in that you've got to balance the books, and all these things have cost implications. But we've got to spare a thought for our traders, and these people pay business rates, they pay council tax, and all these things have an effect on council finances too. So we need to see our residents able to access toilets if they go shopping in our town centres. So again, consistency and fairness across Thirsk and Malton and North Yorkshire. File is another place where currently you have to pay to pee, you might say. So supportive of that if it can be afforded.
Gareth.
Yeah, I just want to make clear, I know there's a review of car parking going on. In fact, there should have been a review of it 18 months ago, but for reasons beyond me, it never transpired. I just want to make clear publicly that I've seen no intimation at all from any review that a free hour in Thirsk will be removed. So I think that needs clearly stating. In terms of fairness with toilets and car parking across the county, well, let's use toilets. This council has inherited 7 different schemes on both matters. In fact, all services. There's been 7 ways of doing different district council services. I think it'd be easy to say equity across the piece. Well, I mean, if we want equity with car parking charges, for example, are we to charge right across the county what the charges are, the high charges actually, in Scarborough? You've got to be very careful. And I think that this review and subsequent decisions will reflect local circumstances as well. I also concur with Kevin. If anybody thinks that anything's free, whether it means, if I dare say it, home to school transport or public conveniences or car parking, it ain't. And we're looking down the barrel of a financial gun. We can't run away from that. And savings have to be made, no matter how unpopular it is. Finally, in terms of fairness and public toilets, it's just sprung to mind as I'm looking at Nigel there. Those of us...
None of us.
Lincoln nabbed them with the Carsey. In terms of fairness and equity, those of us that represent divisions within the former Hambleton district, our residents are paying for their public conveniences through the town and parish councils. Well, that's not fair. So there's a lot more to consider than just the plight of Malton and Norton, I'm afraid.
Did you want to respond to that, Kevin, or just
I don't think it was directed at me, actually, Councillor.
I don't think it was either. Caroline.
Yeah, sorry, I'm reluctant to put my camera on because I don't look terribly great at the moment, so apologies, everybody. Kevin, thank you. The A64 is always going to be an issue for me, and I know that you will do everything you can, but can you please try and put some pressure on our combined authority mayor to raise it up his agenda? He seems to have no issue and no interest in the A64, and until we get the A64 improved, it continues to impact the whole of North Yorkshire on an economic basis. Just to pick up on your information about public houses, I am pleased to say that the pub at Flaxton should be reopening. The pub at Thornton-le-Clay is also reopening, and the pub at Helmsley is also going to reopen. So I think that's a victory. But in that victory, people have to use the pubs, because if we don't use them this time, I think we'll definitely lose them. Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Caroline. And in terms of using our public houses, I'm definitely doing my bit out here. I mean, I've got to say on the A64, I mean, and I've not come here to be party political, and we should be trying to avoid that because that's not in the really interest of our residents. And but I've been really disappointed that we didn't get the fulsome support from Mayor Scaith. He did latterly give us some support in terms of, but wouldn't in terms of a gesture of support, but also the local members of parliament, government members of parliament. I've got to say, probably the reason I languished on the back benches for 8 years of my life in House of Parliament, but I was always willing to hold my government to account if I didn't agree with what he was doing, and members of Parliament should do that, as should mayors, regardless of a political affiliation. And I think there is no question in my mind, and I understand some people might have an ideological objection to dueling the A64. Some people in this room may have. If you have not got that, then we should all lean in and put pressure whatever we can on the government to make sure we get investment in our area. I say regardless of that political affiliation. I'll continue to bang that drum.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Really just going on what I'm going to say about the cost of car parking, seeing you mentioned it, Gareth, because not only do they have expensive car parking in Scarborough, but we have expensive car parking in Filey as well, probably the dearest in all of North Yorkshire. And sadly, when they come there is no free public toilets. You know, after they've paid the extortionate amount that we charge, and North Yorkshire make hundreds of thousands from the parking in Filey, you know, toilets aren't free. And there is, for the amount of people that visit Filey, there is a lack of toilets. A big problem. So that's one. Number two, we also have a lot of holiday homes. And sadly, from my point of view, I have lots of unhappy holiday homes that are really unhappy at the present time because of the double taxation by this council when neighbouring councillors like Bridlington don't charge. And it's affecting everybody in Filey. Properties are going up for sale. People are having problems paying the double council tax, so they're selling their properties. And these properties aren't going into to be bought by residents because they can't afford them. And the problem that leads is they're actually bought as commercial holiday lets and benefit, as you're probably aware of, small rate business relief. So the council loses out again. And it is causing massive problems. And I'd just like to hear Kevin's view on it. Thank you.
Microphone, sorry.
As I said before, Sam, you know, you've got to put the economy first, the local economies first in all our towns and villages, and make sure local traders are well visited. The one thing, whatever else we can do, whatever adjustments we make, systemic adjustments we make in things like business rates, the number one thing any local business wants is to make sure they get customers coming through the door. So the more we encourage people to visit our towns, our villages, be that free parking or be it public toilets, which is bound to be a deterrent for people visiting if they can't access public toilets, particularly if they particular health needs. Then, so I agree, consistency where we can, and I fully accept Gareth's points about the inconsistencies that have been placed upon you by the fact you're aggregating 8 councillors altogether, but nevertheless, or 7 councillors altogether. So in terms of the second home premium, again, you know, you've got to try and make ends meet. I know how difficult that is, and that's one way of doing it. And the other imperative here, which I fully support, is trying to find affordable homes for our young people across my constituency and across the county. So it's not a policy that anybody ideally wants to see, but nevertheless, I understand the reasons why you've implemented it. Can I say one thing about North Yorkshire? And there were some studies on this about every local authority around the country who has implemented that scheme. You, I think, have allocated the vast majority of the money you've received in for it for affordable homes, all of it even apparently. So, which you should be commended for.
Sadly, though, they're not building affordable homes in Filey where they're needed. And really, to help our problem, building affordable homes with Skipton is not really ideal for anybody in Filey because it's nearly a 2-hour commute. So if I did get an affordable home in Skipton and I were working in Filey, I'd have 2 hours there and 2 hours back every day and a huge petrol bill at the end of the week. Thank you.
No, I agree with that point. You know, we've got to make sure that the revenue that comes in is fairly distributed to the places where that money's raised. And I know that Filey has always felt, whether it's been under North Yorkshire or under Scarborough Borough Council, it's always felt it's got a raw deal, and you know we should make sure it gets a fair deal.
Steve.
Sure. Really, it's not massive questions, Kevin, to be honest, but it's around your comments about the solar farms. I already know your position. I know you know my position on some of this. Actually, I mentioned to you a few months ago that in positions actually we shouldn't be building the substation infrastructure next to new sites. For instance, when we've got other sites we can move them to before we have to start building new ones. But I believe in the Cotswolds there's a 12-mile power line going from one application to a substation, which to me is like, well, that's not making use of the infrastructure that we've got already. But my question is around the application here. Is, you know, we had this debate last year about the impact on tenant farmers, and it's not just solar farms. This is around biodiversity, net gain. This is around sites applications, and the impact that on tenant farmers in particular, and how we can protect them. And I know in my ward this is going to be happening with developments in particular. So I'm just wondering, are you involved with George and his work on tenant farmer rights in particular? I'm pretty sure you will be working with Emma, because it is an issue that I'm seeing complaints in my inbox now as a councillor. That's that question. Yeah, I'll come back to the next question actually in a minute. It's about the Malton cattle market.
Okay. Yeah, Steve, a very good point. And again, it's something I raised in my own government. I think it's unfair, the compensation a tenant farmer gets. This is productive farmland the Sturdies have. I don't think we should be putting a solar farm there at all. But nevertheless, it devastates the livelihood for that family. And at the very least, they should expect is a decent amount of compensation to leave that land. And that's not what they're getting. I said this to my government, and I said this to this government. When I talked to Ed Miliband about it, he didn't seem to know what I was talking about. And it's simply wrong that a farmer like that can be pushed off that land. I've got to say the estate, who stands to benefit from a huge uplift in terms of the revenue from that land. So the trust, who stand to benefit significantly from the different change from the change of use, did have a compensation package it offered the Sturdies at one point. Due to the fact that Sturdies tried to stand up for their farm and their family, they've now withdrawn that compensation scheme, which I think is totally wrong. And I would like to see the local authority at North Yorkshire, if possible, do what they can to put pressure on the trust to restore that compensation. I think that's the least they could do. They could make the figures add up before. They should be able to make the figures add up again. I've offered my support to convene a meeting for Rob and Emma with the trust, and we'll continue to do whatever I can.
Well, to be honest, Kevin, I think we're all aligned on that one. Okay. Next question is, you mentioned the cattle market. Have you had any further commitment that the money's actually still there? Because as far as I understand, it's very, very suspect, and it goes in with Section 24 money that happened at Rydale and everything else. And I'd be interested because I haven't heard anything new.
It depends which one you mean. If we're talking about the 1.6 million that was notionally allocated subject to business plan, that's not there, and I understand that. And I think it's chasing shadows to try and go after that kind of money now. That's just not where it is. There is £500,000 that's held in escrow for the Section 106 agreement, so that is there. It was all, I mean, I think there is a deal here that stacks up, but by whatever means, by the registration of the Towns Fund or whatever else we can do it, we can find that money. I think we've got to try and find a solution and do whatever we can to find a solution rather than thinking, okay, I mean, the report that came from the council, I really appreciate the work they put in terms of producing a report, which was much needed, said that any investment that the council would make would be very good value based upon the numbers of jobs directly and in the supply chain. So I think that makes it incumbent on North Yorkshire Council to try and do what it can. I'm not saying you've got pots of money you can use for this, but to try and find a solution to this. It's the responsibility at this point in time is with the farmers and with the auctioneers to put together a compelling business case that can be supported. Nobody expects you to support something without a business case. That cannot be the case. I've made that point to the various different people involved in this many times over the years, and this has been going a long time. But given a compelling business plan, and I would great to see, and there's good work going on now is from Howard and Nick to try and support that. So, we should do whatever we can to try and support a proper plan that came in.
Thank you.
Last question was, will you support this committee asking the officers involved in homeschool transport to come here and answer some questions at the next session? Pardon? He can support it. Why can't he support it?
Can I just, it's easy. I get consternation in many parts of North Yorkshire in terms of this. So of course, officers, councillors are there to be accountable to local residents, and if there's questions to be answered, of course.
Gareth. Sorry. Okay. Right. So with that,
sorry, it was just on second homes, and you're right to point out, Kevin, that this authority, and it was a brave decision. I think Sam voiced his opposition to it, but I think he was missing from the penultimate meeting. That's not a criticism. You voiced your opposition to a second homes premium that I accept. I think there was only one other councillor actually in the chamber that actually voted against it. So it was pretty unanimous. And we gave a pledge, as long as we could, we would spend every penny on efforts to mitigate the effect of second homes ownership. And we haven't just pledged that. You will see schemes and projects now being developed up and worked up to do just that. We are the only local authority in the country that has committed 100% of that funding at this point, and I stress it may not be able to be sustained for eternity given the financial outlook. I'm hoping it can be. I also know that an adjoining authority has pledged 50% of their second homes income, just 50%, but we've pledged 100, and I think we can be very proud of that. And I've been under attack, frankly. I mean, unjustified attack. I'm not bothered, and call me what they want over my stance on it. But actually, it's one of the proudest moments of my low-level local government career to see that chamber nigh on unanimous in trying to achieve something. But we haven't just said the words, we've actually done the deed, and we're delivering.
Thank you for that, Gareth. So with that, Kevin, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. Much appreciated. Much appreciated you come in person, because it's much easier for members to ask questions. Fantastic that you managed to squeeze us in. So thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
So we now come to item 6, which is community safety and CCTV update. So what I'm going to do is, before I ask, and I know we have 2 officers from the police in as well, what I'll do is I'll just ask Simon to come up and ask his question, and then I'll move on to introducing the officers, etc. And that's probably the best way than everybody trying to get up to the table at once. So Simon, if you'd like to come forward and give your question, that'd be great. Thank you.
I wished I was able to ask the MP some, not my role. So, highly unlikely, but thank you for allowing me to ask my question, members, Chair. CCTV. Before I begin my preamble, I'll just tell you what excites me about the CCTV in Malton and Norton. As a member of the public, as a member of Malton Town Council, I am not able to access the footage of that system. I'm not allowed to see the footage of that system. Therefore, my personal position is that I am advocating that the funding of the CCTV in Malton and Norton that is currently paid by Malton Town Council, it's not council policy, but it's my personal view that will turn off the tap entirely of funding the CCTV in Malton. That's where I start from. The council report today, I'll just read out the little bit that's relevant to my question. 5.3, there are CCTV cameras in Malton and Norton. There are apparently 33 of them. CCTV performance in the period 1st of April 24 to 31st of August 25, which is 518 days. The Rydale cameras in action cluster dealt with 223 incidents, undertook 87 evidential reviews, and produced 63 pieces of evidence. I'm not sure if I've misread the report, but I don't see any further detail on whether or not there was they led to prosecutions, recovery of stolen goods. I don't know. Maybe we can find that out from the police. There are CCTV cameras in Malton and Norton which could help trading standards enforce the 7.5 ton weight restriction over Norton level crossing. This restriction is vital to protect the public health from the damaging effects of air pollution. Furthermore, over the quoted period of 518 days, I'm sorry, this is just a little addition to my preamble, the council has failed to collect a small fortune in fines. And here we are talking about funding of toilets, can't afford this, can't afford that. And here I am presenting you.
We're going off track slightly.
Well, we're absolutely on track now.
But I know, but because the officers have seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we could just stick to.
I will stick
to
the gist of what I'm going to say, and I need to say this one sentence. If only one HGV driver flouted the law per day, the income generated by the council would be upwards of £100,000, enough to gold plate the seats of the Malton and Norton toilets and fund a cleaner to polish the taps on an hourly basis. So my question to everybody here and members of the North Yorkshire National Park Committee, I believe, is that right, George? Are you a member of the North Yorkshire National Park Committee?
So we're not.
No, I
wouldn't say directly questioning.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just
finish with your question.
My sentences come together to mean something at the end.
Okay, so if we could just stick to your question as written, and
just bear in mind the words ANPR camera. Okay. Question. Of the 63 pieces of evidence produced by Rydale cameras in action between the 1st of April 2024 and the 31st of August 2025, how many resulted in enforcement or prosecution of individuals for breaches of the 7.5 ton weight restriction over Norton level crossing?
Thank you very much, Simon. So if you'd like to take a sit back.
No, I wouldn't. I've got a supplementary question, Nigel.
Well,
if you don't mind.
No.
This is the important question. This is the key. Okay. I'm allowed to ask a supplementary question.
Yeah, we can ask a supplementary, but obviously the officer has to respond first before he can ask his supplementary.
Well, you can do. I don't mind. You can respond now, or respond now if you wish. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
So we're gonna. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. So she will be responding to Simon's question.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
Thank
if
you.
I may.
No, well, you can't have a supplemental.
No.
Until after you've
Sorry.
the question.
Okay. Just suspend your. I spend a lot of time on this, Nigel, and this is really serious. Okay.
What I'm saying, Simon, is how can you ask a supplemental when you haven't heard the answer?
You'll see. I can.
No, you can, well, you can't, Simon. That doesn't make any sense.
Look, guys. Look.
No, it's not fair to the officer, Simon.
I'm not here as a comedy act. Councillor Les, you ought to sit and listen to this.
No, wait, Simon,
highlighting
your question.
I'm asking my question, and now we'll just explain to you. Highlighting the danger.
Simon,
listen, Nigel.
Simon, you've asked your question. Now if you sit down, then the officer will
I have a supplementary question.
But the supplementary comes. Yeah, that's what a supplemental does. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. It's me misunderstanding.
Sorry,
you're going to give me the response.
Yeah, the officer will get. Sorry, yeah. So the officer will give you a response. When you've heard that response, then you can ask a supplemental in answer to what she has said.
It's obviously my fault. I didn't realise that you were the officer, Nigel. So
no, I'm not the officer.
No, it's fine.
No.
Carry on. Give me the answer then.
Right. So if you'd like to sit back down, then I'll call the officers to the thing, and they will answer a question as part of their presentation. Then, if you want to ask a supplemental, then you can.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
I'm not.
Well, the police come.
Is that right? Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay. Well, just sit there, Sam. You can just. Right. Thank you. So, I'd like to welcome Julie Stack, the Community Safety and CCTV Manager, and Rhiann Buglas, who is a Senior Community Safety Officer. They're both coming in remotely. And we also have, from the police, Inspector Martin Dennison and Chief Inspector Lucy McNeil, who are sat at the back. So I will now ask Julie to respond to Simon's question.
Thank you, Chair. The evidence produced during the period identified has not been used in relation to any enforcement prosecution of the 7.5 tonne weight restriction over the Norton crossing. To give you some context, the camera at this location is a fixed camera and looks in the direction of Norton over the crossing and can pick up registration and vehicle information. We've also got an additional camera that faces away from the level crossing, looking across the bridge facing in the Malton direction. The visibility of this is good and it can identify vehicles if coming from Malton heading towards the crossing. The CCTV service is currently working with colleagues within the council to explore how the CCTV service can assist with identification of vehicles that breach restrictions in specified areas. This work is actually currently ongoing at the moment. Advice from colleagues within the North Yorkshire Council Bridges and Structures team is that this is an environmental weight limit and would therefore likely come under the Area 4 Highways team. We do not have a structural weight limit on the adjacent bridge that would restrict vehicles below 44 tonne gross weight, although we do generally limit abnormal load movements from crossing the structure. That information was shared by colleagues within the Bridges and Structures teams. Any surveillance undertaken has to be proportionate and in accordance with our policies and procedures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Julie. So, Simon, if you'd now like to ask a question based on Julie's answer, you're very welcome to.
Thank you. I look forward to it. If possible, could I have a written answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you for hanging around for this.
Oh, yeah, you could just, it's on. It was on. Yeah, sorry, it was on, Simon, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for my lack of understanding. So, highlighting the danger of noise pollution affecting the potential future occupants of the new houses subject to application 21/01115 for 645 houses at Norton Lodge, Norton, the North Yorkshire Council Environmental Health Officer wrote, developers will be expected to apply the highest standards outlined in the World Health Organization, British standards, and wider international and national standards relating to noise. As the applicant proposes some units with windows being kept closed for noise mitigation, this is not in line with the Rydale policy SP20. As such, I cannot support this proposal. Okay, so as we can see from the Environmental Health Officer's statement, North Yorkshire Council now cites World Health Organization noise pollution standards in planning reports and decisions. By contrast, the Council dismisses the WHO World Health Organization Global Air Quality Guidelines as purely aspirational, in direct conflict with the views of the Royal College of Surgeons and other eminent health organizations and professionals. So my supplementary question, given the proven harm caused by both noise and air pollution, will the Council now acknowledge the dangers of air pollution, even at very low concentrations, and give the WHO air quality guidelines for the concentration of nitrogen dioxide in Malton and Norton the same weight it applies to WHO noise standards? In so doing, will the Council also enforce the 7.5 tonne HGV weight restriction over the Norton level crossing to protect the health of the public with equal concern? Thank you. And I really do look forward to the answer.
Thank you, Simon. So, Julie, I'm assuming you'll want to do that by a written answer to Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel.
Yeah.
Chair, that remit doesn't fall within community safety and CCTV, so that will need to go to my colleagues, I suspect, in the scientific department and environmental protection, if we could direct that question to them.
If you can get that response to Simon from your colleague, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Mason.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I don't understand why it's not being enforced, to be honest, but I can maybe help a little bit with this one. I did ask the question of the science officers about whether the restriction is ever going to be lifted, and currently, because the AQMA has been revoked by DEFRA because it's shown its proven benefits have helped reduce air pollution, that 7.5 is going nowhere, that restriction. But we do need to enforce. I don't understand it, and it's interesting, the money that Simon was talking about actually could probably help pay for the CCTV cameras. You know, so we talk about ring fencing. Well, let's have that conversation about that as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Julie, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. I just wondered whether you can now give your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So good afternoon, members as well. I'm here today with Ree, who's the Senior Community Safety Officer, who's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the Community Safety Hub, which is sort of outlined within the report that we presented to you this afternoon. I'm sure members will have read the report, and hopefully it illustrates the activity that's taking place locally, and it also touches on some of the county-wide strategic work that's taking place, particularly around domestic abuse and the counter-terrorism agenda. Just one item we didn't have the figures for the report, and I'd just like to sort of mention that we've had an update on the number of knives being deposited in the various bins. So we've actually got a total of 368, and the additional figures for the report are 175 into the Malton knife bin and 74 into the Pickering one since it was actually installed. I think you'll also see from the report, which was put together by Ree and her team, that there's quite a diverse range of issues that are being tackled within the patch. And this is very much a partnership approach to delivering in the world of community safety. And I think I'm sure members are aware that community safety, there's often not a quick fix to the problems we're actually dealing with. But our approach is very much based on a problem solving approach. And Ree leads on chairing with her colleagues and our partner agencies regular multi-agency meetings that sort of tackle the day-to-day issues that have been outlined. The report also provides an update on CCTV, outlining some of the performance and the cameras on the patch, and that are actually monitored from the Scarborough CCTV control room. So don't know if members have got any questions on the report in any particular detail, and this is where hopefully Ree will help me as the local officer involved if required. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I just wondered if I could call on Inspector Dennison. Did you want to come up and did you have anything to add to the report at this stage before we go into members' questions? It might be easier. Thank you.
I've nothing to add to the community safety report outside the police report itself, which I'll deliver once Julie's finished.
Thank you very much. So, are there any questions for Julie? Sam?
Yeah, just a question. We have the Dotterell roundabout in Filey, and it has a lot of cameras on it. Are they picked up by yourselves in Thirsk and Malton, or are they dealt with by the Scarborough team?
Those off my, I have to say, my expertise on the Scarborough, the cameras in that vicinity, it's normally my colleague, Paul Romans, who's unavailable for the meeting today. I'm pretty certain that they will be connected to the Scarborough CCTV control room, and Ree's nodding her head, so I'm saying yes to that. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, did they pick up when the sheep were sprayed 3 nights ago?
I'd have to go back and check that. I honestly don't know. I wonder if you could go back and check that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, I think this is, so we had some graffiti in Malton a few weeks ago, racist graffiti on some of the walls, some of the crosses being painted on listed buildings which needed lime treatment, which is very expensive as well. I'm just wondering whether the CCTV in the Malton area caught the people and they're being dealt with on just that vandalism, not about the flags, not about what they sprayed. Well, it is about what they sprayed because someone was racist, but actually have we managed to catch who, or at least get some shots of the people who did?
Again, I'd have to take that away unless one of my, because that's quite a specific ask, and I don't have that information in front of me, unless my police colleagues are able to help me out with that one at all in terms of any prosecutions. But again, they'd probably be pending even if they were live cases.
I can assist on that. CCTV footage was captured in all instances, and none of it allowed or afforded for identification or prosecution due to face coverings and hoods worn. Approximate directions were obtained. 3 individuals using a push bike or a electric assisted bike were observed, but following the scouring of all the CCTV in Malton to try and establish, and Norton to try and establish routes of entry and egress, we weren't able to establish where they come from or who they were.
Thank you. Joy?
Thank you. Charging for the live watching of the CCTV, does that come at a premium, or is it something that we could have the CCTV cheaper, if you like, that we can look back on when a crime is committed? I'm just aware that there's been several instances in Pickering that it's too laborious, if you like, to look back on to find out when it's happened, and I just wondered if they don't catch it live. Yeah, I'm trying hard to explain myself, but I'm going to have to set up a timetable of people going in to check. It's the toilets in Pickering, to check when they're being vandalised. There's been 8 incidences since the beginning of September. We have CCTV footage there, but they say they can't look at it to find out when it happened. I mean, obviously you don't know who's going in, but we have a good idea. So are we paying for something that we're not getting the service for? That's what I'm trying to say.
Maybe we should charge it.
Yeah, I do. I understand where you're coming from. Leave that one with me, because obviously I think it's a difficult one, because if we're unable to narrow down a relatively sort of sensible time frame, it can be a very, very onerous review in terms of we don't know when it is. But clearly, if we can narrow that window down, it's much easier for us to actually work to identify when the crime has actually been committed. But if it's over a significant amount of time, it is actually it's a big resource to tie somebody up to actually undertake that very, very lengthy review. What we've got to do is come up with a practical solution, because ultimately, you know, the cameras are there for the prevention prevention and detection of crime, and we want to work with you to do that. So again, you know, to me, I'm interested to have the conversations to see how we can maximise the resource that we've actually got, and then sort of make sure that we're using it in the best possible way so that we can detect crime. So again, it's a practical way of doing that. We're not saying that we won't do the reviews. What we need is a sort of to try and reduce that risk down. And there's ways of doing that, and I'm more than happy to try and explore those with yourselves.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, Lindsay.
Thank you very much. According to the data, recorded crimes in 2023 and 24 have come down, even though they've come down very, very slightly. Is there any background information recording the to actually say how we've come to these figures? Because obviously people need to be reassured, and these figures are obviously showing this. And so probably it's good news, but I'm not sure because I haven't got any background information. So according to the figures, recorded crimes have come down in Norton and Malton.
Inspector Dennison, maybe that's one for you.
I'm happy to answer that. I can answer it now prior to the... recorded crime for the period year on year, 24-25 compared to 23-24 have come down. There is a small decrease. The reasons for that just purely comes to the report. I would hope it would be fewer incidences of crime, and my rationale for that is the opportunity to report crime and the streams through which crime can now be reported are so expanded. Beyond 101 and 999, you can now report on single online home and via other online methods and via third parties that it has never been easier to report a crime in Rydal, let alone North Yorkshire in its entirety. Consequently, any kind of reduction in that regard, I take as a very positive step. The reasons for that may be there may be many reasons for that. Societal, the closing of some licensed premises removes the opportunity for nighttime economy orientated crime disorder. But generally, it's a very, very large picture with a number of variables. So it would be unfair at this moment in time, without a couple of PhD students at my disposal, to try and elaborate on that. Sorry, Councillor.
It's okay, thank you. Just a supplementary. I mean, I see it, although it's very, very small, I see it as a positive, especially in this world of when it seems as though the world is turning upside down. I think it's a positive and it gives encouragement. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I think we're sort of straying over into police matters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Inspector Dennison and Chief Inspector McNeil to give your update, and then I'll come back to questions. And if it's a CCTV one, that's fine. But I think we're sort of getting a bit, ahead of ourselves. So thank you for coming this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair. I am Inspector Martin Dennison. I'm the Neighbourhood Inspector for Rydal and Whitby, and the report that I present the content is largely concerned with Rydal and market towns of Rydal. There is some content for Filey. For those questions about Filey that I cannot answer directly, I'll ensure that there are questions. We'll take a note of those questions, and I'll speak to my colleague over at Filey and get a comprehensive answer for you. So, councillors, the report for the year, in summary, shows that we've seen a very steady decrease in crime year on year. The Rydal and Filey areas are no different to the North Yorkshire picture. That decrease has happened this year compared to last, and the crime types are evidenced on the data provided on the reports that you should have had access to already. The areas that have seen the most significant increases in crime have been Kirby, Moorside and Pickering areas, and these have not only featured crime but antisocial behaviour as well. We have included in the reports as well, the criminal damage reports, the incidents of graffiti in Malton and Norton. Within this instance, as you may be aware, there were 3 reports of criminal damage involving graffiti on premises on Castlegate and St Nicholas Street, accompanied by the phrases and the Red Cross that we'd seen. As I mentioned to Councillor Mason, 3 individuals were cited painting the signs, but because of face coverings and hoods, they were able to make their escape, and we haven't identified them yet. Additional reports had circulated on social media in relation to these comments. The content of the graffiti was broad and not explicitly offensive, and I am aware that there has been some comment and perception that the content of those messages may have been racist and or hate oriented. At this present time, there are no viable lines of inquiry, and appeals to witnesses have not yielded any breakthroughs. The other major incident that we had in the last 12 months to 18 months was the establishment of an unauthorised traveller site at Rillington during Easter weekend 2024. You may be aware that the matter falls ostensibly under a North Yorkshire County Council planning matter, and although it wasn't an issue, there were clear community tensions that we addressed as a police team. North Yorkshire Police and my team received only a small number of complaints in relation to the occupation of the site. The primary source of the complaints related to children riding quad bikes near the site and across footpaths. There was an investigation into the activity there, and it was established that they were riding on private farmland with the farmer's permission. No further action was taken. Before I go on, there was a comment related to CCTV trolls that I'd just like to address because I've got to the note that I made. And it's just to add to what Julie was saying, there will be no crime in Rydale, Malton or Norton that goes unsolved because we haven't looked at CCTV. My officers will routinely spend 3, 4, 5 hours watching 12 hours of footage on increased speed to establish whether or not we can identify individuals. So there is no CCTV languishing because we don't have the time to look at it. That isn't what the public pay for. They pay for us to use the resources at our disposal. Further to the police activity within Rydale itself, there are 2 existing problem-solving plans that we're operating. A problem-solving plan is a unique and multi-agency approach through the police, the council and third sector partners, including national parks, to look at addressing real persistent or complicated, complex issues in the community. The 2 plans we have currently are one to address antisocial behaviour and crime and disorder in Pickering and Kirby Moorside, and the second being Operation Trailblaze, which is a off-road motorcycle operation whereby off-road motorcycles are causing damage to Heath and moorland in and around Dalby Forest and the moorland associated to that. So we have officers deployed on both those operations. So I'll go on to the crime statistics for the 12 months. I'll pick out the headline figures, and obviously there'll be the, you can ask me whatever questions you like afterwards. The largest increases in crime and disorder within the last 12 months have been in the area of criminal damage and burglary. We've seen an increase in miscellaneous crimes against society, in public order offences and in theft. The offences of criminal damage have increased by 48%. It isn't beyond my attention or notice or the realms of possibility that that increase may not have happened without the crime and disorder at Kirby Moorside and Pickering, and much of what we've seen accounts for that increase in crime. The burglary, whilst the national picture is mixed, we have been insulated for many, many years against the scourge of burglary, and that burglary does take into account not only dwelling house burglary but also shed burglaries. We have seen a spike in shed burglaries in particular, and agricultural burglaries in particular, which account for the bulk of these burglary statistics rather than dwelling house burglaries. We had two spate of shed burglaries in the last 2 months. They are active investigations, and we're looking at nominals, individuals from outside the county. We have traced routes of egress outside Malton, Norton to different counties, and those are active investigations currently. In relation to miscellaneous crimes against society, this captures an awful lot of offences, including poaching and wildlife offences. We're seeing instances of increasing from everything from the poaching from watercourses, rivers and ponds, to hunting deer with dogs, and as you may be aware, hare coursing has seen something of an increase as well. The offences under public order may not come as a surprise, given the difficulties that have been faced in Kirby Moorside and Pickering, and I'll come on to those in a moment in a bit more detail. And we've also seen an increase in acquisitive offences of theft. So in respect of the total crimes recorded by ward, the areas of significant, or that have seen significant increase, have been around Pickering East, which is roughly the dividing line, the A169 east towards Scarborough, up to the boundary with Thorntondale, as I'm sure you're aware. That's seen an increase in 56% in crime. I'm quite confident that's attributable to around 5 or 6 people. And we've seen increases similarly at Sennington and Ampleforth. Those have been actually no specific pattern, quite a number of different reasons of acquisitive theft in those areas. Ampleforth and Sennington are traditionally low crime, so it doesn't require too much of a swing, too many crimes to have been committed for those numbers to increase. And in fact, 56% is an increase in 14 offences. North Yorkshire Police is a signatory, as are most forces in the country, to the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. The national definition of crimes recorded in the Violence Against Women and Girls category includes any crime type or Home Office level 1, violent offences, sexual offences or miscellaneous crimes of abuse and possession and exploitation, of prostitution, or the crime has a domestic qualifier or a misogyny hate crime qualifier where the victim is female and over the age of 10 as per national reporting. An awful lot of police focus is towards the scourge of violence against women and girls, and rightly so. We are fortunate that crimes recorded under this category have seen a decline over the previous 12 months, and that has been a decline from 549 crimes reported to 450 crimes reported. That is a reduction of 99 crimes and a total percentile decrease of 18%. The reduction that is due in part to partners being separated and women being actively supported to be able to make fresh new start and break from the partner, so we're not seeing reoffending. It's also the focus of an awful lot of focus of both uniform and detective intervention to try and gain prosecutions. And there's also the opportunity in these instances through different multi-agency processes to divert offending males and females away from the domestic violence, coercive and controlling behaviour, and trying to gain some compliance and change of attitude towards behaviour. Another positive in respect to the violence against the women and girl positive outcomes. When I mean positive outcome, we're talking about charging, we're talking about cautions, including that also the gaining of court and protective orders against offenders by victims. We've seen that 13.32% of crimes receive that positive outcome. The difficulties are that we are still as an organisation, and I mean this nationally, not in Malton, Norton, certainly not North Yorkshire, we still have to gain a lot of support from female victims. We still have to ensure that the criminal justice system is best suited or best utilised in order to gain that trust and try and secure those convictions and prosecutions. The next section.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. So we've all had obviously the report.
In that case, I'll just
summarise. That'd be great. And I'm conscious of holding you up from your duties as well.
Oh no, I'll tell you what. Don't worry about that. In terms of retail crime, we have seen an increase in retail crime, 8 crimes over last year. Again, we have local individuals committing those crimes, but we do have a lot of travelling criminality attending Rydale, where we maybe don't have the same in-house security of some of those retail premises. I'll move finally onto antisocial behaviour. So reports of antisocial behaviour have increased when compared to 23-24, where we had 576 reports of ASB. We've seen 66 extra reports of ASB, nuisance and environmental. We also have ASB personal category. We haven't included those figures because ASB personal tends to involve neighbour disputes. There's no getting away from the fact that the figures for Pickering and Kermorside have skewed most of our incidents of ASB over the last few months. We've seen the largest increases is Pickering East, and Malton. We've seen a slight increase as well, but Pickering East gets it's not a high ASB figure area, and that has really seen a deployment of resources move from other parts of our area to that part of Pickering. So over the last 3 months, we've been actively addressing a series of crime and disorder incidents affecting Northern Rydale. They've had a notable impact on the communities, and we've had to have the coordinated response. I've mentioned the problem-solving strategy, and we did create a community impact assessment because of the social media, the national, regional media, I should say, and the reported feeling on the street to officers. Collaborative efforts were taken with partner agencies, social services and housing providers to try and address offending. The individuals, we're talking about 6 young people, half a dozen young people. The amount of crime and disorder was disproportionate, and at the moment has been halted. We're aware that these individuals are minors, and that doesn't diminish any of the harm that they've caused. I spoke to one of the councillors yesterday. I think we all know people who've been victims of some of the individuals. However, last week, one of the young people was charged with 20 offences, and we have another 19 pending for them. We have court bail in place, and we've seen a temporary, hopefully a more than temporary halt in offending within Pickering Kirk Moorside. There are a couple of little instances, but certainly not attributed to the core group that was suspect before. And that is the end of the report to present, and obviously I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Members, Councillor White.
Thank you for your report. As you know, I'm the councillor for the Kirk Moorside division, and I get a lot of people talking to me about the antisocial behaviour that's gone on in Kirk Moorside. I have to say that's eased down a bit recently. I'm not sure that's because they're sick of me not being able to do anything about it, or because, as you say, that the incidents have reduced. I'm hoping it's that the incidents have reduced. If you've made arrests, what's the likelihood of anything coming out of that in the long term? Because it seems to me that we're very much shrugging our shoulders with this, because you can arrest them and you can send them to court, and the court is just going to send them back home and they're going to carry on offending. So what are we doing to break that cycle?
It's you're right that we end up working in cycles. We work with in terms of arresting, going to court, some kind of punitive measure, and then a recurrence. In these instances, what I have to convey is the approach, certainly over the last 10, 15, 20 years in terms of dealing with young people, has been the intent to try and not criminalise young people. So rather than arrest, charge and send to court, we look at a whole raft of diversionary measures. And they can be one-to-one coaching, it can be some form of work experience, it can be any number of diversions where we get them into the fresh air. A lot of our structures and mechanisms now are predicated upon this approach, which means that when we deal with young people, the wheels of justice slow. It is harder to remand a young person. It is almost impossible to detain a young person overnight. In fact, we don't. There are a lot of other mechanisms, but they aren't seen as punitive, because the intention with young people is not to punish, it is to break the cycle of offending and get them to rehabilitate. But there are times when that has to stop. And one of the other issues we've found is, with a lot of the youth justice provision, it meets monthly. In the course of the monthly meetings, we're seeing 40 offences happen. And unfortunately, charges had to come in this instance. The charges brought court bail, which weren't expected, not police bail. Court bail carries a lot of sanction. It carries powers of arrest. It's very much a tiger that has teeth. That is in this instance, that has been the dividing line. We haven't seen any offending from certain individuals from the point at which court bail. Now, that isn't our intention. Our intention is not to criminalise. There comes a point at which that, it rapidly becomes something we can't do.
Can I come back to that? So if I'm hearing you correctly, what we say is we try not to criminalise people. We just try and do nice interventions which cause them to become nicer people. And in this particular case, we accidentally got a sanction, which was the court bail, and that's the first thing that actually had any effect on the offending of this particular individuals in Kirk Moorside. So it would suggest, I know it's not for you to make the policy, but it would suggest that we're on a hiding to nothing until we actually get into some serious interventions which have teeth.
It wasn't accidental. It wasn't accidental imposition of charges. I was in Scarborough custody at 2 a.m. when I instructed it, or when I instructed the sergeant to review, and that was the decision that was made. No, we institute court bail to court. So we give the court bail to court. So yeah, it's because it's police instituted bail, which goes to court and it carries a court sanction. And then when court bails after that, that is also court bail.
Keen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I did just want to, obviously every case is different and I recognise that, and I don't know the full details of the instance in Pickering and Kirby Moorside, but I just wanted to share a small snippet of experience from Norton. A few years ago we did have antisocial behaviour issues, and I worked very closely with PC Jane Jones, who was fantastic, I have to say. She's genuinely a fantastic police officer, and we worked really closely together to get some positive outcomes, as well as with the team at Rydal District Council at the time. And we actually facilitated a session in this very room, a restorative justice session. A window was smashed. They identified the children that were involved. It was criminal damage. And we actually brought together the children, their parents, and the victims. And I don't know how I chaired this session for some reason. And the children basically were there to say sorry and to explain what they'd done. We then got talking about what are their aspirations for the future, what do they want to achieve in terms of career, how going down the path they're going down is going to cause problems in the future. They could end up with the sanctions, there's harder line penalties in the future, and that could affect their outcomes in life. So I do understand that, when there are issues, people want to take a hard line, but I do think that session was very useful, and I think is an example actually where by working together, the council, police, and the victims and perpetrators, actually we did get a positive outcome there. And I just wanted to sort of share that experience because it was really positive, and I think an example of fantastic police work by North Yorkshire. I did have some other points, Chair, but it was just on that particular point I wanted to come in, but I had some points from earlier on around CCTV. If now
that's fine. Yeah, I realised you'd not. I mean, yeah, that no, you'd indicated for the CCTV before.
Yeah, no problem. So there was just two things I wanted to flag, and I do want to mention the T word again, and there might be some groans, but you'll see in the report that it does talk about the vandalism that has taken place to public toilets. We have seen recently justification from North Yorkshire Council an attempt to close facilities in Selby on the basis of the vandalism that's been seen there, and I do have quite extreme concern about that because we have seen issues in Norton, we've seen issues in Pickering, and I think we've seen issues elsewhere as well. And I do believe, and I have a very strong view on this, that we should not let a small minority the actions of a small minority to deprive the law-abiding population, the wider community of services that they depend on. And I think very simply that North Yorkshire Council should be standing up to vandals and not sending the message that they're winning by closing facilities that have been hit by vandalism. That was one point I wanted to raise. And the other issue that I wanted to raise just on CCTV generally, we have seen in the report, it does talk about how CCTV has provided evidence, it's led to arrests, it's supported prosecutions. And I do note with concern, I think it's section 5.2 of the report, it does talk about a further strategic review and transformation of CCTV. And I'm concerned that that could be code for cuts to CCTV services, whether it's Joy's toilets, whether it's my toilets, whether it's Sam's sheep. We've seen in my area. We have seen in the course of the meeting. Clearly, we all value the role that CCTV plays in one way or another in terms of reassuring the public, in terms of identifying perpetrators and bringing people to justice. And I would like to suggest, Chair, if possible, and I don't know if now's a good time, but I think we should send a formal message from this committee actually to both the executive of this council, but also to the elected mayor and deputy mayor for policing and crime. And I do have some suggested wording for consideration, and I'm happy to share that now or after there's been further comments.
I think, Keane, that's probably best raised in the work programme.
Chair, sorry if I can. Obviously, in terms of the report that's before us, in terms of the agenda, there is a recommendation there which is to note the report, but I think we should do something perhaps stronger than noting it. And I would just, if I could, propose what I wanted to say and see what members think, if nothing else.
Okay.
Very simple, really. It's that this committee values the essential role CCTV plays in detecting crime, promoting public safety, and wishes to see this service protected and, where appropriate, expanded. So I'm happy to propose that if someone would be willing to second it.
So we've had a motion from the floor. Is anyone willing to second that? Yes.
I understand the point, and again, as with free parking in Thirsk, I've seen no indication at all that CCTV will be reduced at all. In fact, quite the opposite. But before any decision is taken on policies like that, it's out to consultation. It will be out to the wider membership of the authority, and it'll go through the due democratic process. We could, with all due respect, Keane, we could send a motion on every damn service that North Yorkshire Council provides. I mean, I'd like to propose one, or I could do, that this area committee, recognises that there's nothing compassionate or fair about unbalanced budgets and deficit councils. I just think we should wait for the right time. And if I could just say informally, the review of CCTV isn't about so much cameras and the likes, it's about the control of it and working with the police. That's my understanding. So I think it's just a bit premature for us to start sending motions. There's no indication or desire to remove any CCTV camera. In fact, quite the opposite.
I don't think we had a seconder anyway, so I think we'll leave that there, Keane, but your points are noted. Janet.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for your report. First of all, I wanted to respond to Greg, and in part, Keane has already made that point. I actually sit on the Youth Justice Board, as you could imagine, in my position. And the majority of young people who go through that restorative justice, it does work. Why would we arrest children with mental health issues or that just need to be sent in a positive direction and learn new skills, or just simply have a role model? I mean, just as an example, we had one offender kept breaking the terms of his bail, and he kept going down this street that he was banned from. It turns out he kept going down the street because he couldn't read. He couldn't read the name of the street. Why would you stick him in, why would you punish him further? Teach him how to read. But looking at a minority of reoffenders, there are a few hardcore repeat offenders, and for this there has to be a little bit of tougher measures, which I'm sure you've got the grips of, and I feel confident about that because I see the figures coming through on those youth justice reports. Point I wanted to make was about the off-road trial biking in Dalby Forest, which picked up on, and I would also say the mountain biking too, because this has quite a knock-on effect for the surrounding villages and not just the core in Dalby. So what happens is they will bring the white vans, they'll take the bike, they'll park the white vans on the pavement. And if you think about the villages that run along the A170, a lot of them have a beck on the other side of the village. So there's only pavement on one side. So those pedestrians with the pushchairs or in the wheelchairs are forced to go into the middle of the road, or there's no pavement on the other side. And I've got to say the police have picked up on that. They've been really good. They've said they will enforce parking on a pavement, which they don't normally do. But if there's no alternative on the other side of the road. Having said that, it's really difficult. You've got a small village with the pavements parked up. It's really, really difficult. So in part, they're attracted to those villages because away from the prying eyes of the authorities in Dalby, but it does cause an issue from them, and we're working with Dalby Forest to do that. So it sounds as if we're all doing it from a sort of pincer point. Was also interested in the Pickering East 56% increase in crime. As you know, Thorntondale lies on the eastern end of Pickering. We used to have enormous problems in the car park there, and we did our heads in trying to work together with youth workers and everything, trying to stop that. And it just seems to have disappeared at the moment. I think you get cohorts of difficult kids that just move through and then move on. At one it was wheelies in the car park, and another decade ago it was vandalising the Christmas lights. It seems to go through phases, but I do think if it can be nipped in the bud, it's a good thing, and I'm just pleased it hadn't spread any further east. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Joy.
Thank you. And thank you, Martin, for and your team for all you've done in Pickering. I know it's been quite frustrating for everyone concerned. Yes, I'm glad that I agree with what Janet said about, we need to a softly approach. There has been a couple of incidences where I work that we have actually not got the police involved, but we've got the children and the parents in, and they've done work in the hall, and they come back on a regular basis saying, is there anything else you would like to do, because they feel part of the community. And I think that's the thing. The show starts, I no more. We don't have a youth club, and I think they feel on the periphery of society sometimes, and they don't have anywhere to go. Especially those that are maybe told to not come back till bedtime or whatever. Sometimes it's a youth worker that picks up something that they're good at, and gives them some direction. Unfortunately, now that falls very much on the police. So, we're looking at, hopefully, we've got a lot of volunteers in the town to look into some sort of youth provision, but we are reaping the whirlwind of 13 years of no show start, 15, and I've seen kids come and go in Pickering that are a bit naughty, and you work with them. But this one has been an absolute trial, and I'm embarrassed that Pickering's on this statistic as it is, and it is down to mainly a one-person underage crime wave. But hopefully that's sorted now, and I look forward to the figures tumbling for next time. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Joy. Steve.
I think I echo Councillor Sanderson's points about the interventions and the positive interventions. But it's when I've seen all this on social media, I'm not directly impacted, and I see the rhetoric that's coming through social media against these kids as well, and it's absolutely shocking. But I think that's because people don't understand the process as well, and I wonder whether it's just a simple piece of communication might be useful to explain what interventions are happening, so people don't jump on the bandwagon. And there's threats online. It's not good, and I just wondered, because that won't help the kids either.
I think those individuals do know, and their parents are aware of the rhetoric, as you say, on social media. I think communication of the processes, I was going to say drawn out, and it sounds a negative, but maybe the longer processes that are needed to divert and to get to a point at which we are taking action as well, because it is very, very difficult to get a young person into the criminal justice system when you have no choice. Even at that point, it is really difficult to take. So I take on board, and it may benefit from a wider social media or media release by North Yorkshire Police.
Thank you. Sam.
Thank you. I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this with it not being you dealing with Thirsk and Malton. And I don't know where to start, actually, because there's certain things that annoy me about the police. We have a police station in Filey. I called there this morning to report my sheep, as they're now called, thank you, Keane, that they'd been damaged. Now, nobody would have reported that other than I. And the police station was closed at 9 o'clock. And I thought to myself, damn. And then I rode out of Filey today, and there were 3 youths on Sarons, the electric bikes, coming down Muston Road. And then I was in the evidence centre, which is where the police station is, and there's 4 police vans parked up. And I sometimes go for a sandwich to Proudfoot's, where Eastfield there, and there's normally 6 or 7 police vans parked in the car park. Yeah. And I just wonder, where are all the police? And I'm very fortunate that we have a lot of retired ex-inspectors, etc., in the Filey area. And, you know, I mean, they're all probably, I think the easiest way to say it is disgusted by the lack of police that we actually see in Filey. We've had more sergeants in the last couple of years, and previously we had Inspector Short and Sergeant Goslin, who did excellent jobs, and we worked well in the community partnership. And I can't organise a police and community partnership event because, you know what I mean, it's difficult for them to turn up to the event. We've got a new sergeant, and she was going to contact me after I tried contacting her 3 times in July, and she said she was busy in August, she was going on holiday. I understand that, you know, I mean, everybody's entitled to their holidays. And it's now September, and she's still not contacted me. That's Sergeant Hornsby, I think, you know what I mean. So I want to make it work, but when I look at these crime figures, a quarter of them crimes throughout this area are in the Filey southern area, i.e. incorporating myself, the Hertford ward, which is Councillor Michelle Donoghue Moncrief, and Sherburn are in that area. And we aren't seeing police. And you say antisocial behaviour is down. The reason it's down is people can't be bothered, I was going to say, reporting it anymore. And that's the problem. They ring 101, what do they get? You know what I mean? Where are you from? Where's that? They don't even know where, you know, North Yorkshire. And it is a problem. And there is not bobbies on the beat. You know what I mean? I have my office where the police station is in the Evidence Centre, and there's different officers now and again, and they're generally going elsewhere around the area, but you never see them on the streets. And if we do see somebody, it's the PCSOs going out for a sandwich on the lunch break. I mean, it's fortunately, I have to say, it's not working. And if you spoke to Inspector Short and you spoke to Sergeant Goslin, we did work well at one stage. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, it's not working now. And I'm being available with every sergeant wanting to run the community. And I would like to invite you to one of our meetings. And I'd like you to meet some of the retired ex-policemen there. You know what I mean? And they will tell you what it's about. Yeah, I know. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they are absolutely horrified. You know what I mean? And that's what you've got to live up to. Antisocial behaviour is up. Domestic abuse, and it is abuse. You know what I mean? Let's not, you know, about on the coast is probably the worst throughout North Yorkshire. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter whether it's Filey, Scarborough or Whitby. You know what I mean? They are areas there. And as I said, I just want to repeat it. Police don't bother want to report, and 101 don't work, and hardly does 999. So that's where I stand on it. You know, you've got plenty of police cars and vans. I think you should sell a few of these police cars and vans and employ more officers that are walking the street. That will, you know.
But with no additional staff. So the people that we've got have had to be moved to try and support, you know, sort of the town centre projects that we've had going on, said that we need to have. And in terms of when Inspector Shaw was there, the staffing at Filey is no different. So it isn't a case if
yeah, there's no staff out there that the officers, constables, none of them are there when Inspector Short were there.
No, but as in the numbers of officers have not dropped since Inspector Shaw was there.
Well, they're not working, let's put it that way, and I'm being pretty blunt there, you know.
Okay, so, yeah,
Yeah, well, no, you're entitled to agree.
Okay, so it might be better to take this offline, and maybe you could correspond with Councillor Cross.
No, because I hope people in Filey are watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you switch the mic on?
I'm more than willing to talk and knock
green
on the
button.
police doors. All they've got to be doing.
Okay, well, I'll leave you to communicate directly, and hopefully you'll be visiting Filey very shortly. Right. Okay. Well, I'll thank you. I'll thank you both very much for attending today. You've answered a lot of questions for us. And I'd like to also thank Julia and Rhiann for coming in online as well. And that's very good. And so I'll now conclude this item of the agenda. But thank you for your attendance today. Okay. We'll wait a moment. If you'd like to come forward, Ellie, just to get ready, that probably is worth doing. And thank you very much for being patient this afternoon. It's been a long session. Okay, so George, I think you'd like to say something before Ellie presents.
Yes, of course. The first thing is to declare that I am the chair of the Joint Advisory Committee of the Howardian Hills National Landscape and also a member of the North York Moors National Park Authority. I'm not sure if you were able to hear me earlier when I was in the first few minutes of the meeting on Teams, but I just want to make sure that that's absolutely clear.
So we couldn't. So we knew you were trying to, but we couldn't hear you. So
Okay.
Thank you, and that will be minuted accordingly, as was Caroline's.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
just want to also
the technology slightly let us down.
I just want to mention 3 brief points before we start. The first one is this management plan and the work that has been done on it has taken a very long time and a huge and significant involvement with the community. I attended several events and many members of the public, residents, farmers, businesses, representatives from the parish sector were also there and took part. The second point I want to mention is that the national landscapes are going through a very exciting time now with all the changes that are happening nationally, not least the name change from areas of outstanding national beauty. Members of this committee are aware of that, and that change of name to convey the national status and aspirations that people expect of the national landscapes. And the third point is to say huge thanks to the team, to Ellie, to everyone who has done a huge amount of work to achieve what they have done so far during the existing management plan of the Howardian Hills and in the implementation of the future one. So.
Thank you, George. So thank you very much, Ellie, for coming this afternoon. And if you could now give us your update. Okay. Yeah, Sean, if you'd like to speak, yeah.
Afternoon, Chair. Afternoon, members. My name's Sean Berry. I'm the Head of Environment and Sustainability with North Yorkshire Council, and I'll hand over to Ellie to quickly introduce herself.
Hi, Ellie Hook. I'm manager of the Howardian Hills National Landscape.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's lit up. Yeah.
Okay. Am I in control of slides, or is someone else going to move them forward for me?
I think Nick is going to control the slides.
Okay, so next slide then, please. So the reason North Yorkshire Council is here representing the Howardian Hills National Landscape Management Plan is because as host authority, we are essentially responsible for the management plan, and our as host authority represent parts of the almost administrative makeup of the national landscape. So for those who don't know, we have 2 national landscapes that exist in North Yorkshire that we're host authority for. And as the host authority for these 2 designated national landscapes, we manage these areas and support them through their work and ongoing tireless work through conservation enhancement of natural beauty. The council also receives the core operational grant from DEFRA, which supports the national landscape to operate and function in our administrative areas. And we also contribute match funding to these national landscapes as part of our host authority responsibilities, which is essentially officer in-kind support, etc. Essentially, as I say, this funding supports the day-to-day running of the National Landscape team, including the resource revenue expenditure, as well as natural capital enhancement programs. So next slide, please. So the review of and refresh of the National Landscape is a statutory document, and the refresh or the adoption of that must take place every 5 years. It has to be developed by the Howardian Hills National Landscape on behalf of North Yorkshire Council as the host authority, but essentially we take it through our governance process and formally adopt that as the local authority for the National Landscape to deliver. Essentially, by creating it, it formulates the policy for the management of the National Landscape area and carrying out the National Landscape functions that they're obligated to deliver. As I say, it is a statutory document, and the context that I'm sure Ellie will cover a little bit later on of the management plan for the next 5 years is ultimately relevant to a lot of existing policies that exist within our own authority, and it has synergies with our climate strategy, our natural capital policies, our work around historic environment, built environment. It covers a number of areas and themes that are recognised across all parts of our directorates. As I say, these synergies are complementary and supportive, or ultimately are aligned. Next slide, please. So it's important, I guess, before I hand over to Ellie, just to touch on a new duty that's been imposed nationally by government through an updated piece of legislation. It's what we call the LURA duty, or Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. There was recent guidance that was published that outlines how we as relevant authorities must consider the protected landscapes within all of the functions that we deliver as authorities. As this is again a statutory duty that's in place since December last year, and the duty, as I say, it links from the legislation that's around what we as relevant authorities must do and must consider. It's not something we can just discredit. It's not a discretionary item. Because this is obviously quite new, and we are still working through the exact operational implication of what this means, and we're seeking further legal advice. I think it's important to highlight the ongoing work that we have with our protected landscapes, or the Yorkshire Dales, North York Moors, and our 2 national landscapes that we call the protected landscapes. By working with them and collaboratively to explore what this duty means in practice, it's helpful for us to understand how we can demonstrate best practice or compliance with this duty, and how we go about reporting on an annual basis to demonstrate this compliance. As I say, this duty does have implications across all of our service areas. So for across the Environment Directorate, community development, and other areas. And I've listed a few where there's potentially overlaps and areas of relevance. But this will be brought forward in a lot more detail once we further establish exactly what that looks like and what good looks like. So I'll now hand over to Ellie. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me better now? Thank you. So I was last in front of you about 12 months ago, I think, when we were talking about our joint advisory committee and which councillors would sit on it. As confirmed, it's George Jabor as chair now and Caroline Goodrick as vice chair. So we really appreciate that. And thanks for inviting me back again now to talk about our management plan. We have 2 sitting on our joint advisory committee, but there are actually 8 councillors in this community who have an overlap of your ward, including Malton, Easingwold, a bit of Naunton, very small bit. And we have 2 MP constituencies, one of which was Kevin's that is here earlier. I think if we go to the next slide, oh, well, actually, I'll just point out where it is. Sorry, back to the map for a sec. Just to say for people who don't know the boundaries of the national landscape, it does run from Helmsley in the top corner. You'll see Malton mid-right and down to sort of the Derwent and the A64 and just the other side of that in the south. Interestingly, we have Yorkshire Wolds as a potential national landscape coming in, which will meet that. And I think there were several questions about how that was progressing last time I was here. Since then, it hasn't taken a huge leap forward, I must say, but I have high hopes that that will still be designated. So the Hoardian Hills itself is 79 square miles, so quite small, but potential of sweeping some protected landscapes down through the moors, through us and onto the wolds, which would be a really exciting idea. So yes, next slide, please. If we have a look at the sort of things we work on, so our plans for 25-26, you're going to struggle to read that, I know from here, but it sweeps all the way from national level designation and definition of the legal duties of the area, all the way down to you can see bottom right, over the last 12 months since I last spoke to you, we've put up 80 barn owl boxes. 25 chicks were raised in them this year and fledged. So we are working on all sorts of levels. But just to say, we are not just a soft landscape designation doing nice things for the environment. Our duty is to conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the area, and that involves everything from natural environment projects, dark skies, working with farmers, disabled access to the area, and on. Last year was an exceptional year for us, but we brought in 1.8 million to the area in grants. This year we're at 700,000, and I think that will grow. So hopefully we're doing some really good for the area, particularly at the moment working with our Farmer in Protected Landscapes programme, helping farmers in the transition from the old funding structure to the next one. I've got two things, particularly in light of toilet discussions, that I thought you might be interested in and that I would value your support on in the future. One of them is that we have been working on getting a changing places facility in the area. We do not have one in the Hoardian Hills at the moment. So these are the toilets for the most severely disabled. They have hoists for adults and changing tables for adults, but are also for severely disabled children as well. So I've been working on raising the money to put one of those facilities in the Cleveland Way car park in Helmsley next to the existing loos. And we now, I'm really delighted to say, have the capital to do that. So between Visit North Yorkshire, ourselves and the North York Moors, we've worked together to put that money in. Recognising that the council is struggling financially, we've also offered to put in the first 3 years of revenue for maintenance and cleaning. And bearing in mind that's not a heavy additional duty because it is next to an existing loo that is already being serviced. I really hope that you'll support us in making that happen. So what we need is a commitment that the council is happy to take that on in the future. So I hope we can work together on that. The second one I just wanted to raise is we have a industrial level processing facility for animal feed in the area called Blackdale Mill. It's incredible, successful, has grown a huge amount, but it is sitting in the middle of a national landscape in our very small rural roads. So it's going to be about 2,000% up on its original production size, which was just to service its local farm and local business. So it's grown hugely. It's a success, but it's just in the wrong place. So I'm going to say that any help, I think, with solving that issue and with moving that somewhere more suitable or coming up with some sort of compromise would be valued from our councillors. I'll move on, please, to the next slide. So the main reason I am here today is to talk about the management plan, which we have a duty, as Sean beautifully described, that we produce a 5-year management plan for the area. I've been working on that, as Sean said, over the last few months, and in fact over the last 18 months really. The next slide. We have had a load of workshops So we had 4 specifically about nature recovery in the area with experts, and then 5 more on the other topics that I talked about: heritage, housing, historic environment, tourism, etc. We had 2 public meetings and an online public consultation. So you've all had the newsletter for this year, and that had that non-statutory public consultation on the front when it came out. And now it is out for the formal statutory consultation. So that runs till 21st of October. I do hope you'll have a look at that management plan. It's available online. And if you go to the next one, Nikki, it should have the details there. Obviously, you can't read that, but that's a little snip from our website, the link to it. We've got an online survey for your responses that has a link or a QR code to it. So I do hope you'll take the time, please, to have a look at it and submit your comments, and I will really value taking a look at them. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ellie, and thank you, Sean, as well for your presentation. So, members, do you have any questions from Ellie or Sean? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, really, it's a question for Sean. Sean, could you just confirm that the national landscape status in planning terms on our housing allocation, that I'm concerned that we're losing land supply in North Yorkshire quite quickly. I think in the last report I saw it's like 2 years of land supply really, and before we have the development plan in place. I think it's around about that sort of figure. But the allocations that we're being imposed with the government don't allow us, well, hopefully, is not including the landscapes. That, am I right in saying that? And is that right? So our housing allocations, North Yorkshire Council, means we can't put housing in protected landscapes. Is that right?
I'm not aware, unfortunately, Councillor Mason, of the specific response to that. I may have to defer to the planning policy colleagues to advise, and I'm happy to take that away and confer with them and come back to you offline.
Yeah, that would be useful. Thank you.
Ellie.
Just to add to that in a partial answer, in the National Planning Policy Framework, it does say no major development within protected landscapes. So it's not saying no building at all, but it is slanted away from significant amounts of building.
I think my secondary point, I didn't explain it very well, is actually that the importance of this plan is actually making sure that the state of the landscape is secure enough. So if we do get to the point where there's overdevelopment or applications that are going to cause damage, the landscape has sufficient ways of defending it if our own council plan isn't sufficient. That's kind of the crux, Sean, if you can get me an answer around that.
Yep, happy to take that away. It's probably worth noting that our national landscape colleagues are working with colleagues through the local plan process, but I'm happy to take that specific question away and ask for some advice from colleagues well versed to respond to that particular point.
Thank you, Sean. So without any other questions, I'll thank you, Ellie, for coming this afternoon. Much appreciated, and I'm sorry you had a long wait till your agenda item, and to you, Sean, as well, for joining us online and giving that presentation. So obviously, if we've got any questions afterwards, I'm sure we can contact you directly. And if you've got anything you want to bring to this committee, do let Nikki know, and we'll facilitate that as well. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So, members, we now come to item 8, town improvement plans, and this is it's going to be verbally by Howard Wallace. So, Howard, are you online? I can see you there. Can you hear me?
I am. Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. No problem at all, Howard. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Right. Yes. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a relatively brief update, but I'll try and whiz through it because I appreciate it's been quite a long meeting already. So it's just a quick update on the town investment plans, particularly focusing on the Thirsk and Malton area committee area. I did introduce these as part of the local economy and regeneration informal briefing back in January to the area committee members. So I'm not going to go over all of that again. Just wanted to summarise that the I'll call them tips. It's not a great acronym, but I'll call them tips just for speed. The strategic documents that will allow a long-term vision for economic growth and regeneration for towns across North Yorkshire. So they'll align with local and regional strategies. They'll support bids for external funding, including government programmes like the Towns Fund or Levelling Up Fund. And the idea is to identify a list of priority projects and investment opportunities that are realistic and deliverable. So that's just a quick recap on what they are. They're covering 32 towns across North Yorkshire. So we do have to take a phased approach to this, and so we're splitting the responsibility for leading on these. So the larger towns, the urban centres and the principal service centres, those are being led by the regeneration team, and then the key service centres and local service centres are being led by the localities team. So just in terms of the plan for Malton and Norton, we know there's lots of existing studies, plans and reports that have already been done. There's the Malton and Norton Neighbourhood Plan, Infrastructure and Connectivity Study, and so on. So we're certainly not starting from scratch here, and we're definitely not reinventing the wheel. What we've done is excuse me, we've reviewed those existing studies and plans and are currently developing the strategic context for Malton and Norton, identifying key themes, challenges, and started developing a long list of projects for consideration. We've been out to initial stakeholder consultation or stakeholder engagement on those emerging themes and challenges. We had a couple of online sessions in July, and we had a couple of face-to-face sessions in August, one in Malton, one in Norton. We've also sort of liaised with colleagues and officers across the council in different services, as well as with the combined authority. I also attended a targeted drop-in session for businesses at Malton Enterprise Park yesterday. And in terms of the proposed approach that we're taking, we want to make sure that Malton and Norton has a bit of a people and place focus, if you like. So that the town works for people, it's safe, it's accessible, it's attractive, it's a nice place for people to live, to work, to visit. It's a bit of a cliched term, but that's what we want to do, make sure that it's safe and accessible, that it supports investment, that it supports tourism, that it supports business, and that it's a good place to visit, a good place to live. So we're also getting a very strong focus on environmental sustainability, climate change mitigation, resilience, and so on through that stakeholder engagement, as well as some of the strategic reports and strategies. So some of the examples of larger projects, or perhaps more strategic projects that are coming out of those studies and the consultation. There's a need for a second platform at the train station, together with pedestrian cycle bridge and link path through to Norton. The perennial A64 dualling comes up again. New and improved junctions with the A64 as well to help take some traffic out of the town centre. Excuse me again. I think flood mitigation, as we'll all be aware, and resilience measures via partnership working, very important. I think there's a lot of work going on with Yorkshire Water and the Environment Agency and in-house teams as well. The proposal for a Malton to Norton link road and bridge has also been mentioned, but clearly that would be a massive engineering project with a price tag to match. So in terms of more local regeneration initiatives and projects, there's proposals for improving the public transport interchange as a key gateway into Malton and Norton, and other public realm enhancements such as along key routes such as Castlegate, Norton Road, Church Street, and then the link from Wentworth Street car park through to the marketplace, which is not ideal at the moment for pedestrians. There's a big focus, I think, lots of emphasis on the need for improved active and sustainable travel. So improved pedestrian cycling provision. Green space improvements. I'll flick through these quite quickly because I appreciate, again, time is of the essence. Making better use of the River Derwent, such as riverside walkways and so on. Relocation, redevelopment or development of Malton Museum, and relocation of the livestock market and freeing up a site for redevelopment and potentially improving public realm in the town centre. We are planning a bit more targeted engagement with some specific groups, say seldom heard from groups such as younger people, older people, disability groups and migrant groups. And then in terms of next steps for the tip for Malton, we've got some proposals to put together a steering group to effectively bounce some of the ideas and the emerging plan off and seek their initial feedback. And we've had quite a few volunteers to be on that. We will now be shortlisting a very long list of projects that have come forward from the various studies and the stakeholder engagement. So that's going to be quite a long piece of work. So shortlisting, prioritising, and coming up with a defined list of realistic and deliverable projects. We need to develop then the structured document with a clear vision for Malton and Norton. And at that stage, once we've got that, we'll look to go out to public consultation and engagement around about spring next year, and then incorporate that feedback and any insights from that engagement. Look at what capacity and resourcing there is in terms of external funding, internal funding, and of course staff resources, and hopefully have a finalised plan ready for endorsement summer next year. So that's a very quick canter through Malton and Norton. That's, as I say, that's underway. That's quite well underway. Thirsk is the next town that we're working on. That's being led by Faye Snowden with support from localities colleagues. That's not quite as far on as the Malton and Norton one. There's an initial core group of officers established, and they've developed an initial work plan for that. So the next stage is to work on the background document review, familiarisation with the town and with the project, with the initiatives, with the issues, and then develop stakeholder engagement proposals. That's going to take up probably the rest of this year, and then start drafting the strategic context early 2026. Project identification and prioritisation in spring next year, and then hopefully have a document ready for consultation in summer next year, and then endorsement and approval hopefully in autumn 2026. Apologies. The other towns in the Thirsk and Malton area that localities will be working on, they're starting to plan for a town investment plan for Filey and for Pickering, and then a little bit later on in the programme they'll be looking at the plans for Easingwold, Helmsley and Kirby Moorside. So that's the end of my update. Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you wish to invite any questions.
Thank you, Howard. So members, have you any questions? Yes, Keane.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Howard, for your presentation. That's appreciated. The first point I wanted to raise is not really a question. I think it's unfair, Howard, for you to kind of give a response, but I do think it's worth us taking a step back and reminding ourselves that these plans are costing £1.2 million, which is not an insignificant amount of money. And a lot of the projects that have been referenced in terms of Malton and Norton, they're all things which I've heard about, we know about, and they exist somewhere in existing plans already. So I do think it will be interesting to see just exactly how these plans develop and what outcomes come out of them when you look at £37,500 on average per plan, just for a plan to be produced. Just turning to particularly Malton and Norton, there were some, I'd say, tricky issues, potentially contentious issues that you referenced there, the livestock market being one, A64 being another, and I recognise that you have consulted with stakeholders to understand their priorities, but obviously their priorities might not necessarily be aligned with the views of the local members that represent that area. You also mentioned as well about a steering group and the fact that you had volunteers who wished to serve on that. My question for you, Howard, was just around the decision making and the adoption of the plans, and sort of who or what body will be doing that, what sort of decision making process will it go through, and in particular, what role will there be for the elected member or elected members in this case, who may well have different views on some of the issues that are contained within the town plan. Clearly, we want something that is going to make an impact, that is going to be successful, and we also want something that hopefully we can agree on, but it might not always be possible to achieve that. So it's really just a question around the decision-making process once you've got a draft plan in place.
Yeah, I appreciate. I appreciate some of those proposals may be contentious. There'll be different views on some of them. In terms of the decision-making process, there is there's an internal sort of sign-off process, so that at each stage of development of the town investment plan, there's a gateway a sort of assessment, a gateway report and assessment that is considered by the town improvement management board, I think it's called. I can't quite remember the exact term. We have an internal officer coordination group as well to ensure that we are coordinating as well as we can across those 32 towns. Obviously, everybody's got a very slightly different approach. There might be slightly different themes, might be a slightly different approach to consultation and so on. But at each of these gateway stages, senior officers within the council will review the plan, the emerging priorities, if you like, and we will factor in very much the sort of corporate views of the council. But yeah, we're always going to get a plan that doesn't suit and satisfy everybody. I think we're very keen to make sure that local councillors have a good, strong say in development of those plans and sort of able to be involved in that. So obviously we were keen to involve yourself and Councillor Duncan, Councillor Burr, in some of those initial stakeholder sessions, but happy to have separate conversations as well on that. In terms of final sign-off, I understand that'll probably be by the council executive, I think, quite a bit further down the line yet.
Thanks, Howard, for that. I think it's worth there being a sort of discussion county-wide level just around these plans, because what we don't want to end up with is a plan that clearly an elected member doesn't support elements within that plan. So I think it's potentially worth having a discussion around that and seeing what process is going to be for member involvement. But I appreciate your response. Thanks, Howard.
Greg.
Hi, Howard. I'm interested in the Malton and Norton plan because Malton and Norton is a big centre for the whole of the area. I think that one of the main things the council needs to concentrate on is transport and moving around. And there seems to be, to me, a real risk because the mayor is telling us he wants to increase the number of trains that go through Malton. And clearly that's going to have a huge impact on how people get from one side of Malton or Malton and Norton to the other, from Malton to Norton. And I've never quite got my head around whether anybody has properly explained this to the population of Rydale, and whether we understand what people's views are, whether they actually want more trains or whether they would prefer to have the ability to get from one side of the town to the other. Does your plan look into that, or is it ignore it?
It will to an extent. I think it is something that there are clearly conflicts between the aspiration to have more frequent rail services on the York to Scarborough line, which will inevitably lead to a more frequent closing of the level crossing there. So that will have some impact on congestion within the towns. I think one of the things that would counter that is that by having that more regular train service in the towns, it opens up better accessibility for the local residents to sort of wider job markets, wider training markets in sort of York, Scarborough, Leeds even. So there are benefits that come with that, but there are clearly local impacts that come with it as well. I think some of the other projects that are within that planner that are emerging from the consultation and from some of the previous studies around improving the linkages and reducing community severance between Malton and Norton, such as improving pedestrian and cycle access between the towns. Those are things that can help to mitigate some of those negative impacts of additional congestion. I think it is going to be challenging because some of the previous studies have identified that in order to provide much better sustainable transport within the towns, you need to take out quite a lot of the traffic from the towns, and it's difficult to do that without major infrastructure investment. So whether that's additional junctions, whether that's bridges and link roads and things that could cost a lot of money, it's something that we need to balance off those various different benefits and impacts. So that is going to be an interesting thing to see how we actually do that. I don't have a clear answer to you for that one, I'm afraid, at the moment.
Caroline.
Yeah, thank you. Howard, thank you for all your work, and please don't be offended by what I'm going to say because it's not directed at you. I'm going to find myself partly agreeing with Councillor Duncan here, which is a very rare thing these days, I have to say. But I am concerned about the lack of member involvement because at the end of the day, we have to account to the electorate at the ballot box. And if we don't make the right decisions and we allow officers to make those decisions, then we're in big trouble. So I would like to see more member involvement with these decisions before they're taken. Sorry, Howard. We've been going on about the second platform and the footbridge for 15 or 16 years now, but I think we need to be able to say that the members who are elected made the decision. Thanks, Chair.
I would just respond to that, Councillor Goodrick, that no decisions have been made at this stage. So the projects have been identified. We've got a long list of projects that have come out from previous studies or through the stakeholder consultation. So we haven't gone through any process yet of sifting, of assessing those against strategic priorities, but that is the next stage. And that is something that's appropriate for officers to do. Once we've got a set of those strategic objectives against which to score them, that's something officers can do. And then there will be obviously a process for us to consult with local members as well as potentially wider stakeholders as well. And yeah, there's no decisions have been made. Ultimately, I think the decision as to whether to adopt the plan will be a member decision. So although we will draft the plans, we will engage with members throughout that process, and ultimately there'll be a member decision whether to adopt it.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that reassurance, Howard.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. I just think I need to defend the officers a little bit here because the consultation has engaged all members as well. I was at most of the sessions, and I'm sure other councillors were at the sessions as well. I don't remember you actually getting involved in the consultation. You're asking questions that were asked right at the start of the process. So I would commend the officers for the consultation because it wasn't just councillors, it wasn't just the community, it was people like Yorkshire Water, Combined Authority. They were all in the consultation. There's been, I'd say, over 12 months of engagement on this. So these haven't just come out of the thing. And I think just saying to officers there's not been enough engagement is just not fair. Because there has been, and in fact, there was one of the best engagement I had was in your ward. You weren't there.
Yeah, I'll give you the right to respond to that, Keith.
Just if I could, Chairman, I'm just slightly disregarding what Steve was saying there, but I didn't say there hadn't been engagement. I was simply asking a question about what process the plans were going to go through in terms of final sign-off to ensure the plan that is produced has got broad agreement, particularly from the elected members. I couldn't make that session, Steve. We've all got things we can and can't make. I couldn't be there. I want to be involved in these plans, but what I really want to make sure is that the plan that is produced, the local members, myself, Councillor Burt and others are in agreement with. And I've been to these sessions before, and on various different things, on various different plans, and sitting around with all different people with sticky notes and sticking them on boards, etc., in my view, doesn't necessarily end up leading to the best outcomes. And as an elected councillor, I would welcome direct engagement with the officers. I'm confident that Howard will make that happen. We've worked together over many, many years on various different things. I'm happy to have a direct conversation with him about it, but I was simply asking the question in this meeting around what process these plans were going to follow to ensure there was that broad agreement on them. Hopefully that's some clarification there.
Thank you. Okay, Gareth.
I don't wish to get involved in what did or didn't happen in the early stages of Norton and Malton's plan, but I did indicate to speak actually in broad support in Caroline Goodrick's camp of what Keane said, particularly as Thirsk seems to be behind Malton and Norton in terms of its progression. So I'm
not as far as behind as Easingwold is.
We're a bit bigger though. I'm taking from what Howard said and from the conversations I've had that the local members will be, heavily involved at the outset, because I can tell you in terms of Thirsk, and you can call it strategic priorities, previous plans and all the rest of it, King's right, it's about delivery. Give me £3 million for footpath relaying on the marketplace right the way around, access into Thirsk station for those with pushchairs, wheelchairs and the likes, and it'll go 90% of the way to resolving the very small problems in many ways that Thirsk has got. I would hate to say a couple of us we had 3 years ago, a couple of consultants from bloody Doncaster turn up and tell us what we need to do. But there's one word of warning: be careful about where you're being led as officers from so-called stakeholders, because I've seen it time and time again. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name who these stakeholders were, but they nearly held sway with advocating that Thirsk Marketplace is prohibited to vehicular traffic. It was just, I won't say how bonkers it was, but that nearly come to fruition with ink on a piece of paper on a plan until I got wind of it and we had to stop it from all sorts of points of view. So please, the local members and those involved need to be involved as a general principle. And in terms of final sign off, if I'm on an executive that signs these plans off, the views of them local members will weigh very, very heavily indeed in my mind, because it's their community. And I've always said, I'll repeat it again, you should be kings and queens in your own domain.
Thanks, Gareth. Lindsay.
So, not wishing to get into arguments, because unfortunately today we seem to argue an awful lot instead of trying to resolve issues. Our towns need a different vibe, they need different thinking, and they need new ideas. We have in Malton and Norton had lots of these certain discussions before, and I believe that is the only reason as to why Malton and Norton are probably a little bit ahead of the game. At this point in time, I think that it is vitally important that Filey and Thirsk move as quickly as possible, because their towns need it as much as Malton and Norton. I think our officers are doing a cracking job. I think I've been there at every step of the way and been to every single meeting that I could. And of course, people can't come to meetings, but Malton and Norton did have 2 specific meetings of member engagement for us to choose. And both those meetings were really well attended, with lots of different people and lots of different views were put forward. And it was more about discussion and debate, and our MP was there as well. So yes, some things can be pie in the sky and not achievable, but what we were hearing from both those meetings were people who, as Councillor Dadd was saying, the community. They are the people that are living it, breathing it, walking it, and know what needs to be done. There are some big things that need doing that require massive amounts of funding that probably won't be able, and they'll just be a white elephant. But there are small things that can be done, quick wins that can be done, and I think these are absolutely vital. So, notwithstanding, Malton and Norton are a little bit further in the game just because some things have been done. But what is coming out loud and clear is that people do want to be involved. And what I would hate is that we've gone through all this consultation and then at the last minute, maybe, you know, the two members having to sign something off, which the community have genuinely attended, genuinely have put their ideas forward, and it's not taken quite as seriously as they would have hoped. Now, let's hope that Councillor Duncan and we can work together on these, but those sessions have been genuinely attended, and they have genuinely been attended by lots of different stakeholders. So I feel that's a good point. I would just like to point out that there are pros and cons of having lots of different things, and you've got to look at all the advantage and disadvantages. And our infrastructure in Malton and Norton needs looking at. Now, the new mayor must understand that if we are going to have frequency of trains, and maybe I should declare an interest as a train user to both York and to Scarborough, that it cannot be a single fit. It has to look at how many times those barriers are going down and what is it going to do to the traffic. So it's a bigger picture, a much bigger picture, and he needs to be involved as well. So it's massive, is this? And yes, it'll be signed off by exec. But I can tell you those meetings that were held by our officers, and they were very good meetings. I've been to, as I say, they're great. People are genuinely putting in their ideas and their views to make our towns be fit to move forward. And that's basically what it's all about. It's not a competition. It's just that our towns can be fit to move forward, like we hope Thirsk will be, like Filey will be. And I think it's imperative that we do these reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, Gareth, you make some really good points, and I would urge you to get in the consultation quickly so your points can come across, because in the meetings we had in Malton and Norton sessions, the pragmatism from the councils was coming through, actually, because they did hear some plans was like, oh yeah, it's not going to happen. You know, there really was some stuff in there that we had to counter there and then, because you're right, that some of the consultants, they were loving some of these ideas because they could see a consultation coming along the way that would cost hundreds of thousands of pounds and would never have happened. So I would urge you to get involved in the Thirsk Plan quickly. And King, come to the next one, because your input is valuable and you need to make sure you're putting in there now. That's all I would say on it.
Right. Yeah, Gareth, yeah, come back if you wish.
I know I'm indulging. It's just something that Steve said.
Well, mentioned, so you can reply.
It's prompted me to think. I think there's a job to do here about dampening expectations by members of the public and being absolutely clear about what this plan is. It's a framework, because, you know, some of the stuff, as Steve said, is just never ever going to be delivered in our lifetime. It's not. So let's just sort of dampen them expectations.
Thank you. So Howard, hope you can take away from that. There's several views around the table, but they're all quite passionately held. So hope you can feed that into your thinking with certainly the Thirsk plan, which is in its infancy, but also finishing off the Malton Norton plan as well.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you for attending this afternoon, Howard. Much appreciated. And hopefully we'll have a progress report from you soon. And perhaps Easingwold will get to the top of the list in the next couple of years, perhaps. So that would be welcome in our end. Well, thank you for attending. Thank you, Howard.
Okay, no problem.
So members, now we look at item 9, which is the briefing note on banking and cash handling services in the area. This has already been circulated. Sorry? Yeah, we're noting it. If any, if members have any points on this, perhaps given it the late hour, they can feed them back through myself or Nikki.
Sorry, I haven't got. Presented to the Richmond Area Committee last week, and they asked for any information I could find on the impact on businesses. I don't know if members would like me to do similar for the Thirsk and Malton Committee.
Yeah, that'd be great, Steve.
Yeah, Joy actually did ask that before she left, that whether we can get that on the working.
Yep. Okay, well, I'll feed that in. Yeah, thank you. Right. So item 10 now is the work programme, so we can pop that one in immediately, I think, into that discussion. Any members, anything on the work programme that you would like to bring forward? Keen.
Thank you, Chairman. There is, just noticed on the report, there is the report for information only on section 106 and SIL. And I think there are some issues within that might be worth us potentially having the opportunity to dive into at a future meeting. So I wondered if that briefing note could form the basis of a report, we should have the relevant officer to attend and ask questions on.
I think it's very important. It's quite, it's impactful on all our parishes. So yeah, I think that, Nikki, if that was, you could note that one. Thank you. Right, so now we come to the reports that have been circulated for information only, with the briefing on note on poverty. Sorry. Yeah, okay, go on.
My request earlier about the homeschool transport team coming to answer some questions, I would like to put forward as well.
What would you be asking them?
I'd be asking them primarily about the review, some of the implementation that I don't think has happened properly. We can't ask it in the appeal, so we need to ask it somewhere else.
But that is part of the review, isn't it?
No.
Well, I'm happy for you to propose it.
Okay, I'll propose it. I'm pretty sure.
Do we have a seconder? Okay, so if yeah, of course you can. So seconded by Lindsay. Yeah, Gareth.
I'm sorry, I can't agree with that. I think we've spent as an authority hours upon hours upon hours discussing home to school transport. The policy was agreed with the review, but I know you're going to come back and say it's the review you're talking about. The policy was agreed. It was then brought back to council, I think about 12 months later. I could be wrong on that, very recently. The pledges that were made to have a review and the timescale were clearly stated by Councillor Wilkinson. We have a scrutiny committee that has just only last week discussed the PIR and the timeline for any changes that may or may not arise as a result of that PIR and policy changes and all the rest of it. We as a local area committee, with all due respect, I don't think we can add anything at all to that debate. I really genuinely don't. I heard today, and I heard talking about members of the public when they're not here. But I heard today, in effect, people are disgruntled at the policy. That's what they're disgruntled at, and it would be unsettling if we didn't fetch the review forward. I think it'd be more unsettling to fetch that review forward with only half the evidence, for example. But that's a county-wide issue. It's not an issue that's just peculiar to Thirsk and Malton. So on that basis, I don't think there's any mileage, excuse the pun, in us discussing it at this committee. Had it been an issue that was particular to Thirsk and Malton, then I could accept that, as is what's just been suggested about SIL, because I know there's issues around that. But this is a county-wide policy and a review, PIR and the likes, that's taking place that will be county-wide.
Thanks, Gareth. Did you want to respond to that? I'll let you respond to that, Steve, and then we'll put it to the vote.
Well, I think responding to it is maybe then we should be calling for the county-wide opportunity to have this review brought forward then, because you say half the evidence, but that's not what people are being told in the appeal. So apparently it's all done and deal. So the policy is done, everything else. Now you mentioned the date in the chamber. Well, the minutes stated 1 year. And the exec member stated another year in her response at the end when there was no comeback from anyone else in the chamber. So there is an element of confusion there. It's also been pointed out that some of the communications, and it's been accepted by the council, that was communications errors. And I do think we need to be looking at this from the perspective of the parents involved here. There is a lot of parents that have been impacted in this constituency, as we all know, and I think they want to ask questions and get some answers about how we can get this a route forward on this. I think we need to find a route forward, a balanced route forward, not just because at the moment the feeling is that at North Allerton, they've dug the heels in and there's no response at all to parents, as we've seen today in some of the responses. So I would like to propose it. I suspect it's probably not going to get accepted, that we at least ask for that review to be brought forward as an ACC.
Okay, so Steve's made a proposal to ask for this committee to ask for the review to be brought forward, and that's been seconded by Lindsay.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to check because we're obviously we're on the work programme at the moment, and what I thought originally was being requested is that what Steve wanted was Councillor Mason wanted was that for the officer to attend, so that if we had local issues or questions, we could ask them. And if that's what's been proposed, I don't, in principle, have a problem with that. But it now sounds like we're actually making a specific request for something which I don't know the detail of, I'll be totally honest with you, so I'm not in an informed position to be able to take a view. But if it's simply having an item on the agenda where the local issues relating to this particular policy could be discussed and questions can be asked, again, I don't see a problem with that, but that now seems to have morphed from what I thought that was to...
I think we need to be clear. So, Steve,
sorry, can I come back on this?
Yeah, I just need to be very clear on what you're proposing.
Okay, that's a good point, actually, because I think I was just making the assumption that the original proposals to bring it here wasn't going to come through without a vote. That's what I picked up from Greg. So, the proposal is then to bring the officers here so we can ask the questions on the local context with parents of Thirsk and Malton here. And then we can then ask the question for the review to be brought forward after that meeting.
Janet.
I think we really have done this to death. And yeah, we have. And I think what we heard from the people that were here today there was a clear misunderstanding about the policy when they were saying about the confusion in chamber. The reason that they have to have the dates that were given is because you can't look at the evidence unless there's been a full year of evidence to collect. So you can't look at a full year of evidence before that evidence is up in that year. And actually it does represent a very, very small number of parents. You might say it's a large number because the post bags are getting full, but I think the stage ones, there were about 163 stage ones appeals out of 140,000 children. Actually, the majority haven't got a problem. It's just going round and round in circles and it's clogging everything else up.
Sorry, but you expect 140,000 children?
Okay.
Sorry,
yes. We're ending up debating this. We're actually talking about whether to actually put it basically on a future agenda. So, rather than have the debate now, let's just vote on the principle of what Steve is asking for. So, if I and Lindsay as seconder. So, who is in favour of Steve's proposal? Yes. Against? I think it's 5 and 4, isn't it? 1, 2.
Oh, yes, sorry. 4.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. The other report to note, the reports to note was the briefing note on fuel poverty, the briefing note on mobile coverage, and the briefing note on the section 106, which we've said that we'll bring to the work programme to further discussion on that. So those items are dealt with. Item 12. Any other items? I've had nothing, Nikki? Thank you very much. So I come to item 13. Date of next meeting, 5th of December at 10 o'clock. So I close this meeting at 16:54. Thank you very much, members, for your patience. My prediction, Lindsay, was absolutely not correct in the finishing time. It was so I do apologise for that, but I think we've all had a chance to have a good discussion. So thank you, members.